Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Cinema Savvy. It is myself, George, joined once more by Tate, and bringing back onto the channel Scott and Cam from the SpyHards. Delighted to have you both on, as we always do. And we are here to review the sixth installment in the Mission Impossible franchise, Mission Impossible Fallout, written and directed by Chris McQuarrie, and of course starring Tom Cruise as Ethan Hunt, released in 2018. But before we get into anything else, how are we all doing tonight?
Yeah, good. The hype is fully kicking in. I know that we've had some films coming out already from our summer blockbuster season, which is, one of the biggest in years and years and years. But no, I can definitely say after watching this film, the hype train is fully jumping off a cliff or whatever he's going to do in the next film. But no, fully focus on this review for now.
I'd say for me, I'm doing pretty well. I've been getting my reps in when it comes to Tom Cruise stunts. I've been jumping on and off sofas to try and get that built up, just to increase my hype for the movie. But yeah, I'm doing pretty good.
Yes, I'm Cam, and I am recovering from COVID reckoning part 2. So I'm doing well, though, so my voice is a little off. But no, it's been a blast, and it was really great to take in the best movies of this summer, Little Mermaid and The Flash, and then roll into Fallout, arguably the best summer film of 2018.
What's the scuttlebutt, Cam? What's the scuttlebutt about Mission Impossible?
God bless the scuttlebutt.
I've not even seen The Flash, or I've not even seen Little Mermaid fully. So
I've seen one of those films. I guess I'm going to talk about it probably on a video that's already released at this point on our monthly movie Untitled show. But yeah, interesting.
Yeah. I mean, at least, yeah. No, I'm glad you're doing better, Cam. That's the most important thing. I don't have to. I could have made an awful comment then about watching The Flash and having COVID.
Yes.
But I'm not going to.
This was no chimera virus for me. I'm fine.
Yeah. Oh god, that is throwing it back. Mission Impossible 2, guys. That was done a few weeks ago. Check that out. But yeah, I don't even know how to go on from there. Well, I do know how to go on from there. We're gonna put you both on the spot, Scott and Cam. As we've had you on Spielberg Retrospective, we had you both on Bridge of Spies. Cam, you jumped on Jaws and the legendary Spielberg classic that everyone knows always.
Yeah.
And we want to kind of ask. It's a good question because everyone's got different answers. Can you remember both the first Tom Cruise film you saw?
Tom, I was going to call you Tom, Scott. My God, I'm already infected.
Why would you do that? Is it because I'm short? Is it because I'm a Scientologist?
Because you're inconquerable.
Yes, and my sofa jumping skills are second to none. So
that's the case. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you recall?
Do I recall? The easy answer to that question is absolutely not. It's actually probably Mission Impossible 1.
I am racking my brain in terms of my age and what would have been coming out Tom Cruise wise, because I know I saw Top Gun when I was probably like 11 or 12, and it would have been my parents renting it. I remember the occasion. We had a summer cabin, and my parents would go to the video store and rent movies, and the whole family, including my grandparents, would gather around and watch movies at night. So I saw a lot of Bond movies that way, Raiders of the Lost Ark, and I know we watched Top Gun there. The question is more like, that falls into that late 80s, early 90s. If I would have seen something else he made around that point in time beforehand, but I don't think I would have seen Rain Man or Far and Away or something. I didn't see those till well later. So I think it's Top Gun.
Excellent. I mean, that's the first time someone said Top Gun, actually, I think, which is interesting. And
yeah, I'm shocked by that.
Has anyone said Cocktail?
Yes. Yes. I think oh god. I'm trying to remember. Stephen Carty, I think, said Cocktail. Because I hadn't seen it, and I'm trying to go through some Tom Cruise films. I could be wrong. That might be one or two he mentioned, maybe. But yeah, that's one I need to tick off the list. And it's quite sort of scary in a way, right? If you talk about Tom Cruise briefly, well, we're going to talk about a lot, aren't we? Because we do every week now. But he's been doing these films for like 4 decades. And I think one of his films' 40th anniversary might have actually been Cocktail or Risky Business. He spoke about it on the red carpet at the world premiere in Rome. And he was like reflecting on 40 years. And I was like, and he was talking about how young he was when he filmed it. And I was just there like, 40 years has gone by and now you're throwing yourself off cliffs with parachutes, doing these insane stunts people would think like you've just broke through now. And it's a testament to his, I guess, commitment to the screens is the sort of words that he loves to use that we see on interviews. But both good answers. And
Risky Business is 40 years old this year.
Yeah,
I've never seen it.
It is weird, when you kind of chart his trajectory, where you do have like these kind of early sex comedies, because I think he was in Losing It as well as Risky Business, and then he just becomes this like mature actor of adult dramas. The Firm, A Few Good Men, and then somehow flash forward like 20-something years later, and as you said, he's hurling himself off cliffs, and it's just like talking about someone who's very capable at navigating the terrain of an ever-changing Hollywood.
No, absolutely. And if anyone's seen that Arnold Schwarzenegger documentary on Netflix, it kind of reminds me that it ends like he has had 3 people's career in one lifetime. I was like, it's a bit like Tom Cruise's films if you really want to break it down. And it'll be insane to see where he goes next. Well, we know he's going to space at some point. Whether he returns is still my eternal question. I've thought that for a long time. Not making any deep sea comments. He's going up north, not down south to wreckages. So we shall find out as time goes by. But enough Ocean Gate references. Tayte,
yes.
Can you go for the IMDb plot synopsis? Because sometimes they're an essay, sometimes they're not.
This one is not. This one is very vague. Ethan Hunt and his IMF team, along with some familiar allies, race against time after a mission gone wrong. That is just the most kind of open, plot synopsis I think I've ever seen. I may have though just said Ethan Hunt does what he does in every Mission Impossible film again. Like that could describe any of the Mission Impossible films, literally any of the Mission Impossible films.
I like the variation in the sense they just literally don't put the same plotline every single time. And it kind of makes it interesting for Fallout, and kind of where we'll go with this, and we'll get people involved at home. So as always, please do comment your thoughts to Mission Impossible Fallout. This is the time this video going up, the 4th of July. Maybe you want to celebrate with another Tom Cruise film born on the 4th of July. Celebratory being a very unpatriotic term for how some Americans would look at a film like that. But comment your thoughts on this film, because Fallout's the one that I think spoken about the most online. Certainly has been since its release. And many will argue it's the best film of the series. And I'm curious to hear people's thoughts on Mission Impossible Fallout. So please do comment again. Everyone, if you like this video, there is more Mission Impossible coming. Dead Reckoning Part 1 releases now. It seems to change all the time. On Monday the 10th of July in the UK. Wednesday the 12th of July, I believe, in the rest of the world. And only showing on IMAX screens till the 21st of July. Also, Mr. Cruise, sorry, just plugging this because this came out today. If you want some context of pre-recording, he's only been doing some promotional activities for Oppenheimer, Indiana Jones, and Barbie. So check out his social media if you want some hilarious photos of him and Chris McQuarrie holding Cineworld tickets on the day after they enter administration once more. But aside from that, I'm going to ask everyone if they can remember their memories. I say memories, I mean, this is recent, this is 2018 now. But can you all remember maybe the lead up to this film or your thoughts heading into it and how you reacted to seeing it for that first or maybe second time?
Yeah, I remember, there being a bit of hype on the channel around this film coming out. It was a big summer blockbuster season. I actually had to go and look because I was like, okay, this film made a lot of money in, box office. What else was out that summer? And then you go and look at the summer list that was out or the films that were out that year, and you've got Avengers Infinity War, you've got Incredibles 2, you've got Deadpool 2, you've got an Ant-Man and the Wasp movie, you've got Solo: A Star Wars Story. That was a big year for cinema. That was a big summer for cinema as well. And I remember it was kind of one of the centerpieces of one of the films that kind of on the channel we were looking forward to the most, as like, oh, okay, we need to go and watch this film. And I remember seeing it in cinema. I don't think I saw it the week it was released. I'm pretty sure I saw it on review after the fact, just because I wasn't the biggest fan of the Mission Impossible films. I'd seen, at that point, all of the films, but I wasn't a massive fan of them. I just kind of followed them every now and then and, went, cool, pretty stunts. And I wasn't really kind of fully grappled into it. But this film changed that for me. This film made me more of a fan of the series and got me a little bit more involved in it and made me go back and rewatch the previous films and dive a bit deeper into the world of the IMF and Ethan Hunt. So my memories of film at release were I wasn't really too interested until I watched it, and then I was very interested.
Right.
It's a bit different for me. And firstly, I think we need to preface a little bit because Cam and I have never, ever gone on the record about a Mission Impossible film in our 3 years of podcasting.
That's true.
So I expect our check is in the post on its way to us right now because you are getting some exclusive details. We've never told any of these stories, so I'll leave that. The number, the check should be lots of zeros.
Yeah.
But for me, I loved Mission 1. I loved Mission 2. I was well into it. I loved the soundtrack for that film. It was very much my film. And then I just didn't bother with the rest. I wasn't interested at all. I don't know. I don't know what changed. But then I started seeing the marketing for Fallout. I was like, damn, this film looks good. These trailers look great. These stunts look amazing. And in the lead up to it, I went back and watched all the ones I hadn't seen. And I watched the first two again. That was kind of my build up for it. I just remember thinking that trailer was astounding and just being exceedingly hyped for it based on the marketing.
Yeah. For me, like the first Mission Impossible is one of the more important movies for me in terms of being a young moviegoer, and that movie at the time in 1996 was very confusing. And many of us who watched it were like, what the hell just happened to this thing? And it became one of the first movies where my friend Derek and I just sat and obsessed over Mission Impossible. We rewatched it 20 times, breaking down every little plot element to explain exactly what was going on moment to moment in the original Mission Impossible. And so coming out of that, we were very hyped for part 2. 2 was a little more simple. I think I enjoyed it, but I only saw it really the once and then handful of years later on video. But I did see all of them in theaters. And I remember, this sounds so stupid now, but being kind of annoyed that Christopher McQuarrie was coming back to do Fallout. Because, let me explain.
No, I know exactly where
I can get it. I get it.
Yeah. When this franchise started, the idea was like, you had Brian De Palma, who's like one of the most interesting stylists in film. And then you switch to John Woo. Oh my God, what is he going to do with a Mission Impossible film? And then you switch to like J.J. Abrams, and it's like every movie was like a different director coming in and bringing all their own style to it, and then moving on and handing it off to someone else to take over. And so when Christopher McQuarrie was announced as coming back after Rogue Nation, a movie I very much enjoyed, but did not put near the very top of the franchise, I was like, okay, like I guess there's more he wants to do, but like this is kind of upsetting what to me the biggest appeal of the franchise was. Because I'm a big Bond guy. Bond movies typically have more journeyman directors, especially at this point in time. You're not getting, a Sam Mendes during this era. So that was something Mission Impossible could do, was bring in the best of the best. They were talking to people like David Fincher, to potentially do one of these. That was exciting. And so I proved dead wrong. Like whatever I was annoyed about, was obviously proven completely wrong by Fallout. But actually, and this is a movie that, Scott and I live in very different areas. I'm in Vancouver, BC. He's in London, England. We saw this movie together in Las Vegas, Nevada, when we were attending the Star Trek convention there in 2018. And it's been a tradition. Every year we go to the convention. It's like 4 or 5 days, depending on the year. And then we would go with our group of friends to a movie afterwards, the day after, just to kind of relax. And these cons are very exciting, very exhausting. Oof. But yeah. We have a track record of bad movies just because it's that mid-August period. So we would be seeing things like Suicide Squad, The Dark Tower, Hobbs and Shaw. These were kind of the standards. This movie, getting to see Fallout, was a real bonus, and we watched it in IMAX in Las Vegas, and it was unbelievable.
That's pretty amazing.
Wow.
I can't really follow that story very well. I can give you my thoughts on Fallout. I'm in the same boat, Cameron. I remember when McQuarrie was coming back, because I liked Rogue Nation, and I was more like you. I liked the Mission Impossible films. I wasn't all in like I am now. And that probably goes the same with, I think Edge of Tomorrow is the film I was marked as the Tom Cruise one, where to me it jumped from like, actually I really, really like this actor. Why is everyone giving him beef? And I'm going to go back and watch some more stuff. And the lead up to Fallout, I went to the red carpet. Now this is a younger me. I say that obviously I've been to the new one, but Last Jedi came out. It's the first time I ever went to a red carpet as a fan, trying to get autographs, stuff like that. Scott, I think you've been to a few, haven't you? So
yeah, I did like Star Trek 2009, Star Trek Into Darkness, that sort of stuff, yeah.
And they're very long. And, I was younger. I'd finished uni at that point, so I was like job searching. I was having like a something else in the meantime, and weekend shifts meant I had loads of time in the week, so I kept going to these red carpets. I got very lucky. I did Ready Player One, got to meet Spielberg and a few others, Last Jedi, and I remember I came home from holiday, the start of July, and they'd announced Mission Impossible was going to have a premiere at the BFI IMAX. And I was all in on doing these red carpets. I had a lot of good luck, which is the most important thing. I say good luck in the sense now it's just like avoiding autograph dealers fighting and punching and screaming and shouting. And I went to the red carpet. I'd been to a few. I knew what it was all about. I know that there's some really interesting stuff with Rebecca Ferguson, which I'll talk about as well. But I got to meet Tom Cruise, and I was completely blown away. And this is it. There are A-listers. And I'm not arrogant in the concept of starstruck, but very few times have I been at one of these events and I've genuinely felt starstruck. And I mean that in the respect of, because I've done a lot of conventions. The very first convention I did, I got to meet Carrie Fisher and Mark Hamill, which set a standard that's never going to, ever be topped. So seeing the genuine A-listers since, and the ones that I'm very excited about meeting or seeing or witnessing in person, etc., doesn't happen often. And what astounded me about Tom Cruise is, he's got, the Scientology stuff, the reputation, the industry thing, people be quick to jump on it. But I was amazed that this person, who's one of the biggest actors on the planet, met every single person at that red carpet, who took 40 minutes. I mean, if anyone's been to the BFI IMAX in London before, I've got my Oppenheimer tickets booked to preview that. It's like you go down like an underground subway, and it's literally like a roundabout underground. And I just won't forget him meeting every single person. And after I got to have a really good conversation with him, got a photo with him that his assistant took, signed stuff, he then politely asked me to move aside so he could talk to the people behind. That doesn't happen at these events. That never happens. And it sort of blew me away, and again, whether it's a brand, people want to say, whether it's an act, they're entitled to say that. But if it is an act, he's doing it better than anyone I've ever seen at these events. And the commitment to it, and Dead Reckoning, I'll talk about that when we do the big Dead Reckoning spoiler video. And it sort of changed not my mind, because I loved him anyway, but it just added that realism that, sometimes it is good to meet your heroes, the ones that are genuine. And for me, the hype heading into a film, there was that. There didn't need to be anything else. Like, the film could have been terrible, and I'd have probably tried to find a way to say I really like it. Thankfully, it's, to me, at least at this point in time, I think the best film in the series. I say I think because we're a few days away from seeing another one.
I want to throw, Mission Impossible 3 back into the fold for that one, personally.
That's fair. And I'll say this about the series. And Scott, don't take this wrong way. I think there are 5 great films at this point in time. But as an overall, I know, like Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, films that many don't like have a lot of fans. And I do think Mission Impossible 2, and credit to what you said earlier, Cam, it's a John Woo film. It's a bit different, and I think at least it has that. They haven't got a journeyman come on board and do something that doesn't work. It's not forgettable. It's just very different to what the series would go on to be. And Fallout, actually talking about the film now, I don't know how many times I saw it at the cinema. I didn't get the chance to get my ticket back out. I either saw it 2 or 3 times. First was on release. I definitely saw it on the day of the Winnie the Pooh red carpet when I met Ewan McGregor, because that was very weird. Very weird timing. And one of the Chuckle Brothers died, which I remember being really good about, which is a very off topic.
Was that Christopher Robin, the Christopher Robin movie, right?
The Ewan McGregor one. I went to the red carpet to meet Ewan McGregor, and it was the Winnie the Pooh one. And
it's the fact that you threw out the Chuckle Brother guy died.
Yeah, I was traumatized.
There's North Americans watching this, what the hell is the Chuckle
Brothers?
What is that? Are they in the Pooh movie? What is that?
I was like 6 in the morning, and then it came through one of the Chuckle Brothers died. And it was just this sad. Oh no!
I was like, did my fever come back? What is going on right now?
But yeah, honestly, that's how I've got so many weird memories from watching this film, and that's one of them. Is seeing it again. I went with Charlie's been on the channel. I think we went to the super screen in Leicester Square? It's not the IMAX, but it's the big screen next door to it. So I've got fond memories, and I love this. And I think I went with my dad as well. I think that's the first Mission Impossible film he's seen, or it was his second. He doesn't actually know which ones he's watched and which ones he hasn't, which doesn't make it easy trying to get him to go to Dead Reckoning when it's gonna. Hey, we're going to go back to the first one because Kittredge is here and the guy that got bullied with the knock list. But enough talking about that. Sorry, we're 20 minutes in. Excellent stuff already. But as we do with this series, we switched a few things around. Spoke about our memories at launch. We're going to talk about 2018 just very quickly. We talk about the box office, and I think there's a special shout out to Mission Impossible Fallout. We spoke about Tom Cruise a lot. This would go on to be his highest grossing film of his career up until Top Gun Maverick last year. It grossed $791 million at the box office off a $180 million budget.
I'm shocked.
And as you said earlier, Tate,
I was just going to say, I'm shocked this film had only $180 million in their budget.
Well, I mean, it climbs and climbs, doesn't it? And for the year it came out, again, being one of the biggest films of the year still, with the likes of Avengers coming out, the record-breaking ones. We had, you mentioned Incredibles 2, of course, that made over $1 billion. 2018 had not as big as 2019, but 2018 had a big box office. And Mission Impossible Fallout, I remember that a lot of people started going, and that's not the first time I've seen the Tom Cruise side, but I felt like that's the first time he's starting to not climb again. Literally, he goes rock climbing again in this. But where we go with Top Gun Maverick, which, you know, I could wax lyrical about the film for eternity, if I'm being honest. I think that doesn't have the success it does without Fallout. And the film's building up to that. And I think heading into Dead Reckoning, not that I'm doing predictions or anything, but Dead Reckoning, its biggest marketing campaign is the fact it was attached to Top Gun Maverick for 6 months at cinemas where the whole world went and watched it. So it's really interesting looking back at that year and seeing, you know, this arguably is the highest point of the franchise. And I guess the question I'm going to put you all on the spot with, I'm not bothered about guessing numbers, but what I'd love to ask is, and I know not everyone likes box office, but do you think Dead Reckoning Part 1 is going to outgross Fallout?
Yes.
Good question.
Yes, straight up answer, yes. I think it will close in. It's got a shot at a bill.
Yeah, like the thing about Fallout was it didn't open massive, but it had such great word of mouth that it just kept chugging along the way that something like Avatar or Maverick does as well, where it was like people saying, you need to see this movie. The thing about Dead Reckoning that'll be interesting is it's going to open bigger. I think the anticipation for it is going to be much bigger coming out of the gate than anticipation was for Fallout coming out of Rogue Nation. The question is entirely then about quality. What is the word of mouth? This summer's been so strange in terms of movies that have delivered box office. In a different year, a movie like The Flash is just a guaranteed hit no matter how good it is. It's just going to do well enough. Whereas this summer, we've seen a lot of bloodbaths, both with that, with Pixar. So it seems like early word is that Dead Reckoning 1 delivers. So I think it's going to do overall probably a little bit better than Fallout. I don't think it's going to be Top Gun Maverick level, though.
I'll answer my thoughts with a question and also my answer, because I'm not someone who tracks box office or release dates or anything like that particularly. But I know Dead Reckoning Part 1 has quite stiff competition around it in a sandwich. You've got, Indiana Jones opening a week and a bit before, and then you've got Oppenheimer and Barbie opening a couple of weeks afterwards. That's not a lot of time for it to really like get a grasp on its audience and to sort of project itself into a sort of a longevity of having a few months stay like Maverick did. I suppose so. I'm going to sit on the fence and say I don't necessarily know. But my question for the people who do know in this conversation: what sort of competition did Fallout have at the box office when it came out?
That's a very good question. I think if I'm planning it, Fallout came out, I believe, the end of July 2018.
Yeah,
Infinity War.
It had like August to itself almost. And
this is it. And I think Incredibles, I'm sure, was late June America, probably July here, because we always get the Pixar films a few weeks after. That did very well. And again, the counter program is summer blockbuster season. You've got your big action films, you've got your family films. Infinity War, I felt like it stayed in the cinemas for a few months, but I think it weaved out.
Wasn't it? It was like
Infinity War was like May, so I think that had tampered out by July time. But the thing with Fallout, and this is kind of a testament to Tom Cruise, the international box office, which for some reason people don't like talking about on these sorts of things. I know we always talk about worldwide box office, but people forget how big a name he is in world cinema. And I'm very, very curious about this. I mean, the press tour, it doesn't matter when we're recording this, when this comes out. He's doing 7 red carpets across like 4 weeks in 7 different countries. That doesn't happen. You might get your America one, you might get your European one. Maybe you'll chuck in another continent for the sake of it, but 7 in a month, the whole team doing all of them. it is wild, and I think this is what I'm very intrigued by the Barbie Oppenheimer stuff and Indiana Jones. Actually, that this sounds terrible, and it's not my intentions. Is Oppenheimer going to perform well in the Asian market, specifically somewhere like Japan? Not stating anything in that sense,
no, I don't think so. No.
And Top Gun and sorry, Tom Cruise, not Top Gun. Tom Cruise is like one of the biggest stars ever in Japan. He always does a red carpet there. His films always make money there. And I believe that Top Gun Maverick is still out in cinemas there a year later in Japan. And it's
Barbie is going to do amazing everywhere. You're going to have Barbie.
No, I think Barbie's going to be biggest stronghold's going to be America and Europe.
I don't know. Barbie's a global brand. It's proper
I don't
global.
think Barbie is going to take that big of a bite out of the audience that would be going to Mission Impossible.
But here's the one thing Mission Impossible actually has against itself. It's got a part 1 attached to its name. Can you name a single film that's ever had a part 1 attached to its name that's not been outperformed by a part 2 or by the film previous?
Phantom Menace?
Well, that's not really... Okay, that doesn't really count because that is, in line of things. But
Force Awakens following the Star Wars ones.
Part 1...
How did Deathly Hallows do? Part 1 and 2?
Very well.
Not as good
part
as Part 2.
Part 2 broke all the records. I guess Avatar... One made more money than 2.
They're not part 1 and 2. They're just sequels, so that's different.
Yeah, they're sequels, but it's very different. It's a film that has the name Part 1 attached to it.
I mean, did anyone here watch the Twilight Part 1s and 2s?
Well,
Mockingjay, I don't know
Part
either.
Part 2 did massively better in both of those.
Didn't Mockingjay 1 do better than 2?
I swear,
I think it might have.
Part 2 did
better.
But
I could be wrong. I didn't see Mockingjay Part 2 in cinemas because I didn't like the book. I loved the first 2 books. Didn't like the third, which was strange. But
I feel
it's
like
a very good question. Actually,
the Part 1 may actually hamper the film.
But I don't think anyone spoke about this film in the sense like because most of them are book adaptations, right? Everyone knows, but the second half's what we want to watch. None of us know what the hell was going to be in Mission Impossible Part 1 and Part 2. I think they've hidden a lot from marketing, and even going back to it is a good question. It is still a Part 1. Like even aside from audiences, the story won't end at the end of Part 1, and that's what heading into the Fallout rewatch. That's what was really interesting for me, segueing into sort of behind the scenes stuff because rewatching this last week, and I think this is the first time I've seen this since the cinema. If I'm being honest, I think I've had it on 4K since it came out. And I haven't watched it at home until now. Not just to give my initial thoughts on the film, but it is one of the best action films of the last 20 years, as far as I'm concerned. But what really struck me on the rewatch was, yes, I love to wax lyrical about Henry Cavill's fabulous beard stash. Yes, we'll talk about that later, and Justice League. But it's so tight from a narrative structure as well, which is what caught me together. I'm going to think of the big sense. I'm going to think of the action, but the story to me is equally as compelling in this film. And that's not a worry about Dead Reckoning Part 1, but I am having to program myself rewatching these, again, 6 independent films, you know what I mean? Non-linear, what's the word? Standalone stories.
Yeah.
It's the first time
it's
the first time they're going for the Part 1 and 2, and I know that Chris McQuarrie spoke in an interview recently about originally the idea was to shoot them back to back and have different names, but then it just did become a Part 1 and a Part 2. So I'm very curious about what they do. But with regards to behind the scenes, if we move into that, ironically, this is the one with the least issues. So many of these, we talk about insane delays. Directors coming and going, actors coming and going. This was the shortest gap between Mission Impossible releases. So we had July 2015 Rogue Nation, July 2018. This one, that's 3 years. Even heading into Dead Reckoning, of course, COVID being an issue and whatnot, delaying it to be closer to Part 2. If Part 2 is going to make its release date, even that's a 5-year gap, which is quite insane to think that this was somehow 5 years ago already. But the short gap between releases, I think, helped. This was greenlit before Rogue Nation came out, so clearly Paramount were very happy. And the only real behind-the-scenes issue we can even talk about, whether you guys think this is an issue or not, a recurring cast member no longer in the series, or at least we don't know if he's going to pop up. Jeremy Renner would not return to the franchise. The man brought in to replace Tom Cruise in Ghost Protocol goes out before Tom Cruise due to commitments shooting Infinity War and Endgame. I just love to, I know we've not had either of you one on the others, but I'd love to ask, what are your thoughts on Jeremy Renner in these films? And I guess Part 2, do you even care that he didn't come in this? Because I'll be honest, I don't think he's missed, and I don't mean that to sound disrespectful, but I don't see a place for him in this story, if I'm being completely honest. I know I don't know if you know what his fate would have been, I'll tell you guys after if you're not aware of that as well.
Yeah, it was going to be killed off at the start of the movie, right? In kind of where the Ving Rhames is being held at gunpoint, it would have been Jeremy Renner, and things would not have gone well. Jeremy Renner, to me, was a bummer, really, since the beginning. I am actually a big fan of him on screen, and him being brought in to potentially take over Mission Impossible at a precarious time out of Ghost Protocol made sense to me. And I would have been on board with whatever he would have done. But it was very clear that the power struggles behind the scenes, that Jeremy Renner's character made almost no sense as you continued onwards. Like when you're seeing him in Rogue Nation, basically just standing on the sidelines, talking to Alec Baldwin, you're like, this actor has nothing to do. And if you are brought in with kind of the promise that you are going to kind of take center stage and then you wind up there, why do you want to keep coming back? I would be game for them to bring him back at some point and pay him off properly. Maybe there's like a heel turn or something like that, and you give Jeremy Renner a lot to do. But in terms of what he did in Mission Impossible, it's not really that noteworthy. If we are writing the knock list, the ultimate list of Jeremy Renner performances, I think his Mission Impossible work ranks pretty low. And so I was okay with him not being in Fallout.
Listen, I'm a Renner Knight. I've got the Renner app.
A Knight of Renner?
Yeah. Knights of the Ren table.
It means you're very disappointing.
My parents certainly think so anyway, so that's a whole other story.
Easily dispatched.
Much like Jeremy Renner. But we Cam and I should say spoke about the Bourne Legacy a long time ago, where they brought Jeremy Renner in potentially to be the next lead of the Bourne franchise, and it wasn't well received and it didn't go anywhere. And then Matt Damon came back, and when I heard that he was going to be in a Mission film, I was like, oh, okay, he's kind of the man of the moment. It made sense. But when he didn't come back, I was like, yep, okay, cool, because he has not got the star power of Tom Cruise.
Yeah,
it's simple as that. You can try all you want. You can do as many apps as he likes. He is not Tom Cruise.
Tayte?
Yep. Yeah. I mean, I was okay with him in Rogue Nation, and I was okay with him in Ghost Protocol, but like you guys have said, he had nothing to do left over in this franchise other than die a heroic death. And sure, it would have fit in the script, him dying in the opening scenes. I would have been completely okay with that. It would have increased the stakes of the film, instead of just having kind of Ving Rhames not die at the start. Instead, it's a bit of a weird swap out. You're going to have someone killed off, but then in the end, you choose not to kill off a different character. It's a bit.
They made the joke as well, didn't they? Like it's sort of like, oh, none of us died, and it's that awkward. They wink, nudge into the camera, and it is interesting because I'm saying in an alternate world about the Avengers, but at least to his credit, I mean, talk about showing Infinity War and Endgame. Well, he wasn't in one of those two, and obviously then to bring him in for this, and I think he even said he didn't want to do a few days just to be killed off, which I do respect, maybe from like a perspective that maybe he's thinking, if I'll skip this one, if they want to bring me another film, maybe there'll be something to do. And again, we don't know what's going to happen with part 1 and 2. Obviously, he had the accident last year. I've got no idea if he shot anything. I don't care if he has, in the sense that don't bring him out for press if he's had the accident and they want a quick cameo or something. And there's that very weird documentary they've done on Disney for it, which was the trailer was very weird. If anyone saw that, it felt like something out of The Boys. But yeah, that's like the only really big thing. And
I do just love. I mean, just to jump in for a second, because it just sprung to mind. I mean, we're living in this world of multiverse films. There is a version of this reality out there where he did take over,
and he's doing the stunts.
He's doing all these stunts. He's hanging from the helicopter. Renner is the man of the hour. He's in Top Gun Maverick for some reason. He has taken over Tom Cruise's
He's
career.
Rooster.
Yeah, sure.
Wow.
Yeah. Why not?
As his commitment to the film, his big old commitment to the film, as one of his stunts involves a snowmobile. No, we're not going to go there.
His app took off. Like, it just hit the mainstream. Everyone's on Facebook, Twitter, and the Renner app. That's it.
I do think rewriting that opening so that it is Ving Rhames and he survives kind of undercuts the weird kind of theme of this movie as much as there is a theme going through Fallout. It's this whole, the mission you choose and you have to deal with the consequences of your decision. If he dies at the start based on Tom Cruise's decision making, that makes a lot more sense as to what's driving the character through the movie.
Yeah.
Versus like, you almost got Ving Rhames injured. It's like, well, Ving Rhames was okay.
And it's like, I can imagine like they're like, oh, Tom needs to kill someone. And they're like, well, you're not touching Ving Rhames, you're not touching Simon Pegg. And also, actually, this is the weirdest behind the scenes. I'm saying this now because I want to get away. Simon Pegg got ripped for this film and apparently got a 6-pack. And apparently on set they had loads of like 6-pack names for him, like 6-pack Pegg, I think Tom Cruise used to call him. Which I just thought was the most, like, not to criticize Simon Pegg, he's an absolute legend, but I just can't imagine Simon Pegg being ripped, but apparently he's kept in amazing shape ever since.
Wouldn't it be 6-Peg?
Ooh,
probably. There were some very weird nicknames they kept talking about, apparently, with Simon Pegg on the red carpets, and I could just imagine them on set, like, Tom Cruise is making these jokes, everyone's like, do we laugh to please him? Or do we just carry on? I'm not going to try and answer that, but it does fascinate me that was a thing, but the other behind the scenes, and this is really more of a Justice League thing, but we've got to talk about the Henry Cavill mustache, haven't we? One of the greatest. Again, if I could grow that, I absolutely would, but I can't. And that's that done and dusted. But
can we leave it by saying he chose the correct film? Like,
yes,
100% chose the correct film in this scenario.
So, for anyone watching who is unfamiliar with this amazing... I remember this when it first came out on Twitter, like Variety would tweet, and it was just the most sensational news reports. Of course, a film came out called The Justice League. Well, it hadn't come out at this point. A film was being made called The Justice League, directed by Zack Snyder. For those unfamiliar who've never come across the hashtags, if they didn't know he had been involved at any point of his career. And Henry Cavill, of course, was Superman, so that sounds really weird. We've just had yesterday a new Superman being cast as well. The day before the Witch premiere, I'm sure Henry Cavill wasn't asked at all about that. And when the reshoots came, directed by Joss Whedon, Henry Cavill was shooting this film. And the story is, they asked Henry Cavill to shave. He said no. They then followed it up, and this is where it's a bit murky, doing a bit of research. One story says they were approached, the producers of Mission Impossible, by Warner Brothers. They would be compensated $3 million for Henry Cavill to have a shave, and that Mission Impossible would then CGI in the beard stash for him to finish filming, so he could do Justice League. Now, one article, and a lot of articles say Henry Cavill said, no, I'm picking Mission Impossible. You'll CGI my beard out for this. And the other stories are saying the producers were fine with it, Cavill was fine with it, but it was Paramount that stepped up and said, no, not at all. So there's differing sources, what people believe. I think it's probably Paramount saying no seems like the polite answer for looking back in retrospect, Henry Cavill probably being like, I'm liking this Mission Impossible film. I'm not liking what on earth is going on in the Justice League. And what would then go on to become one of the most terrifying images of modern cinema was the CGI'd Henry Cavill, beardless for a film. The chin that I thought was like a joke online that had been photoshopped after screenings. I don't know if people have seen them before. People Photoshop like camcording footage.
Yeah,
it wasn't. It was real. Have you all seen Justice League?
Yeah, saw it in theaters.
Yep, saw it in theaters.
Oh,
I mean, you are saying that the mustache gate is the worst bit of CG in cinema history. I mean, that is until The Flash came out. Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
You haven't seen The Flash.
Until we get to the Speed Force and The Flash, and everyone's like, what the hell is that?
Oh,
I saw the director came out saying that the justification of poor CGI is that because it's set in a multiverse, things might be different in the other worlds.
Well, they try and... Okay, so I don't want to go into it. We'll talk about it in the Untitled Movie monthly show, where I will go into heavier depth of it. But it's a poor excuse because you can't just say the CGI for the entire film is terrible just because, of this one scene, which it needs
the multiverse.
To be
that's
it
like
needs to be terrible, therefore we're going to make it terrible. No, that's not how it works. But for this film, it's such a weird kind of uncanny valley event that, he chose Mission Impossible Fallout over the Justice League, and we end up with a fantastic performance from him in this film. but a terrible mustache CGI'd out from the other film.
I think audiences were okay with the choice.
Yeah.
DC fans weren't.
Oh no, but they use it as ammunition, don't they, for when they got the hashtags going again. But it's still remarkable that that's the story, that's a behind the scenes thing. And I just remember at the time it was massive because everyone's like, people were like from day one, you just can't CGI a mustache on, like it won't work. And it was obviously when those images came out, because in the film it's like a camcording off someone's phone, isn't it? Like someone's like recording it. It was just,
it's the opening.
I think I saw it like a year after it came out, and it was just the most terrifying and ridiculous thing. And yeah, Henry Cavill absolutely chose right. And I said, I absolutely love him in this film. And I think even for what he's not trying to do career-wise, but for what he's angling towards still, which we think may be unlikely, playing a certain other spy. And a cool behind-the-scenes fact that Tom Cruise, I didn't know this until now, Tom Cruise was originally cast in Man from U.N.C.L.E., and the role that he had to drop out with ended up going to Henry Cavill, which I saw the film once many years ago. I can't remember much, but I cannot imagine Tom Cruise in that role. I know it's another 60s spy TV series remade for the big screen, but it's not like they've gone similar casting, is it? That's two completely different people. But I would love to see Tom Cruise in like a period film, now I think about it, except from American Made, which just looked modern.
Tom Cruise circled a number of spy projects outside of Mission Impossible, because you're right, he was attached to Man from U.N.C.L.E. He was also attached to star in Salt for quite a while, which was going to be a male character, and then they switched it to Angelina Jolie and changed the name from Edward Salt, or maybe it was Edwin, either way, to Evelyn. But he ended up doing Night and Day, I think, over those two.
I'm no fan.
I quite like that film. That's
fair.
Yeah.
It's a good point. I mean, behind the scenes wise, that's the gist of this film in terms of the big behind the scenes stuff. We'll talk about some of the stunts later, as we always do, if we want to get into that. But we always talk about direction as well. And this is, again, going off what we said earlier, Cam, this is trickier because it's quite simple. Chris McQuarrie returned, and he would then return twice more. And if this series does end with part 2 of Dead Reckoning, he had directed half the franchise, which is insane to think about when we've been building up and been covering so many different directors. That it was 5 different ones the first 5 films, and then it's almost like Harry Potter. You know how they found it with David Yates and just stuck with it for the remainder of it. Very different films though.
He came back, but he came back and did better. This is a better directed film than Rogue Nation. Not just from kind of the general kind of camera work and stuff like that, just kind of kind of stage directions, everything like that, everything, all the minute details in that sense, but the stunt direction as well is so much better in this film. I think we talked about I think I talked to you off screen about kind of the stunts in Rogue Nation, kind of comparing up against this film, and it feels so much bigger in this film. It feels so more immersive. Like you're actually there for the stunt, and it's so much more believable, even though the stunts are bigger and wilder. And that's purely down to the director putting his camera basically in the right place at the right time, capturing that moment. And he's able to get everything out of all of the actors in this film. It's a more impassioned performance than the previous film from everyone involved. It just has an amazing vibe to it all the way throughout the film. Non-stop action, really, really cool moments, which is exactly what you expect from these kind of films. He did an absolute stellar job on his second time around.
I think Christopher McQuarrie is so interesting in that, like, when we're talking about Brian De Palma or John Woo, we're thinking about their filmographies. Whereas like Christopher McQuarrie is known mostly as a writer around the time he's doing this, because he burst onto the scene with The Usual Suspects and had worked on so many different things, and he didn't really move into directing. You had Way of the Gun in 2010, or in 2000, I should say, which was like a solid movie that didn't really stick with me particularly. And it's kind of like him attaching himself to Tom Cruise because he works on Valkyrie. He does a number of Tom Cruise projects. He directs Jack Reacher, the first one. But it's like, if you look at his directorial career, it's really just Jack Reacher into Mission Impossible movies. But you look at his writing career, he's there for like Edge of Tomorrow. He's there for The Mummy. So it's like, I feel like his ascent in terms of technical ability is largely because of this relationship with Tom Cruise, which is developing for decades. And Tom Cruise is one of these people, I've heard it said before, that he could easily be a very, very good director, and he just doesn't have an interest in actually being a director. So I wonder how much is just McQuarrie learning all of these like more and more advanced skills just by proximity to Tom Cruise, who has a close collaboration with him and is giving him access to all these tools and how to, learn to use them better and better and better. So I always feel like when they make something like, say, Rogue Nation, they're sitting there when it's done going, what can we do better? And it would not shock me if they were looking at that underwater sequence, the one that was heavily promoted in Rogue Nation at the time, and going like, the CG looks kind of dodgy in this. I think the audience may lose a little bit of immersion here. And they're just bringing that into Fallout. Everything feels realistic. McQuarrie's working on a large scale canvas. The IMAX screen looked absolutely phenomenal when you got to all the helicopter shots in the theater. But there's just way more of a sweep and a scope to this movie. It feels so ambitious. And it is a 2.5-hour movie. It is so propulsive. And one of the things I noted last night watching it was that it actually starts kind of slow for a Mission Impossible movie. Usually they start you off with kind of like a big hit, right? And then cue up the theme music. Here, it's kind of stepping along, getting things in place, and then the movie just bursts into a run and carries you right to the very end. It's a little bit of a shakeup from the traditional formula, and McQuarrie's ability to make this look completely seamless showcases to me an ability that is not seen very often in modern action filmmakers. There's very few I think at this point put on a similar level as to what he's doing. I'd be looking at like the John Wick, director, Stahelski. I'd be looking at, Miller for Mad Max Fury Road, but there's not many out there. Kaczynski for Top Gun Maverick. There's not a lot of competition though, because a lot of these movies we've referenced today when we talk about blockbusters, they have serviceable at best action. And I look at what is going on here. This is visionary stuff.
It's interesting, building off of what Cam said a little bit with the Tom Cruise connection. I think one of the most important things to be successful in working on a Tom Cruise film is being able to work with Tom Cruise. And he has worked for Tom Cruise as a writer on his films and then directing him. And it's, you forget sometimes, but Tom Cruise is a producer on these films too. He has a heavy say in what happens in the Mission films. And we've conducted some interviews on Mission Impossible over the years. And we've spoken to people who have worked with Tom Cruise. And he is very hands-on all stages of production, from shooting to pre-production to editing afterwards. He is there with them making and crafting these films. So even writing, actually, yeah, very good point. And so there has to be a good relationship. So obviously one of Chris McQuarrie's strong suits is the fact that he can work with Tom, has a shorthand with Tom, and knows how to sort of get the best out of what Tom can offer. On the other side of that, I think Christopher McQuarrie, it takes me back to, I got first interested in him with sort of the pre-production for this film because they put out a Empire movie podcast spoiler special with McQuarrie leading up to this film coming out, Fallout. It's like 3 hours long with McQuarrie and Chris Hewitt just talking about this film. I remember walking around the foggy streets of Aberdeen, Scotland, listening to that podcast and being like, he just understands what I want from a film. This guy just gets it. And then the proof was in the pudding when I saw the film a few months later. And so he understands what a mission film, and by proxy, I suppose, a spy action film should be offering. And he has so far successfully delivered.
And I think kind of following that too, Tom Cruise wouldn't keep him around if he wasn't working with him. He certainly wouldn't put him on his non-mission films. He wouldn't be like, come and do a rewrite. It goes back to Ghost Protocol when he was rewriting that, which we think is a great film. But the fact that he went from uncredited rewrite to straight into writer-director. And at that point in time, he's coming on Tom Cruise's other projects as well. They're talking about projects down the line, post-Dead Reckoning. And what's kind of fascinating, going off what you said, Cam, as well, that when they speak about some of the big stunts, their ideas, they say, we've got some unused, concepts from other mission films we couldn't do. Now we're going to do them. And it takes me back to those sort of Bond films, right? From the 70s and 80s, where they've got the ideas for the scenes. They know what they want to do, and they're going to shape the films around this. Octopussy is probably jumping to mind because you've got some insane stunts there. And obviously it's been the anniversary, people are talking about it. And I think what makes that fascinating for me as a viewer and following these is with Fallout, the writing side of McQuarrie I think is massively underrated, because you go to this film and you've got massive set pieces, but as you said, Cam, it just flies through. But you're so invested in the story, you're invested in the characters, you want to know what's going on, and at the same time, you're getting these really satisfying big action set pieces, and you're not there thinking, "Forget about the story you've just watched. Come and look at this big stunt happening." And this isn't a criticism of Rogue Nation, but the plane stunt, arguably the best stunt of the entire series. It's the opening scene. It's not relevant to the plot when you really break it down. And yet in this one, we've got a helicopter chase at the climax with a ticking time bomb. And you're getting these 1-2 gut punches like, here's a helicopter chase, here's them fighting on crash helicopters, here's Tom Cruise rock climbing as well. And you've got these massive moments, but you're so invested in the story. And I think there's so much credit due for how McQuarrie is writing these characters, for his collaboration clearly with Tom Cruise. And I think as well, the other actors, we'll talk about them shortly as well, but he gets the best out of everyone around him. And even bringing back someone like Julia, who arguably has no role to play, suddenly I think it's one of the best things of the entire series is when they bring her back in this, which I'll talk about a little bit later on. And I can't comprehend not only the quality of this film, it being done in 3 years after Rogue Nation, that the gaps between the series, the shortest gap between films is arguably the best. Well, again, I think the best film of the series. And I think there's a reason McQuarrie's of Cruise Everett, even going back to their motion blur videos, if anyone's seen those, and telling people how to correctly format their TVs to watch stuff. I love that. And it's a really interesting relationship they have. And even the press tour for Dead Reckoning, when I saw them at the red carpet, I got to speak to both of them. They're both great, but they're just talking with each other. They're having a laugh, and it's clearly a genuine working relationship the pair have. And I think they're getting the best out of each other. And Tom Cruise as an actor, I know auteur's thrown around like it's interesting what you said, Cam, that he probably could direct, and it's something I'd actually be really curious about. But as an actor and producer, he's almost his own auteur. He brings in his creative teams. He knows who he's going to work with. He's going to pick his projects. He'll pick his cast members. It's really interesting that he, as you said, he almost does everything except direct, which in its right is insane that he is still this star that, as some actors get older, they have their day, not looking at like big names or anything, but, some might get a big comeback film, but the sort of trajectory of Cruise, heading into his like mid-40s to his 60s, which is scary to say, he's getting bigger and bigger. And you could argue that Top Gun Maverick is arguably the peak of his career, and that was 40 years in, which is ridiculous.
One of the things I think that Cruise and McQuarrie understand that I think so few do is, I go back to the movie Raiders of the Lost Ark. One of the greatest action scenes of all time is the truck chase, right? You have Indy running up to his friends saying, "Where's the Ark?" And they say, "On the trucks." And he goes, "Trucks? What trucks?" Boom, action scene. And that is all the setup you need. And because of that, that's why Raiders is so unbelievably well paced. And I think that they really borrow from that with these Mission Impossible movies they've made, where it's like they've managed to drain out all the inessential talking that so often drags down action movies, and they understand exactly how to stage them, basically like silent films, the way that George Miller did in Mad Max Fury Road. It's like, these are action movies. They need to move, and the audience needs to be on the edge of your seat, and it works.
I guess the films themselves make it a little bit easier for that, because it's meant to be an impossible mission. So you can have these kind of crazy scenarios, crazy stunts being set up as these barriers to get past throughout the entire film. So there's going to be nothing dragging the film down in the middle. It's got to run quickly through, because otherwise there's going to be no tension built. And this film does that really, really well. Even though there's a ticking time bomb at the end, the ticking time bomb realistically starts at the very start of the film when they lose the nuclear weapons. And then throughout the entire film, that is going in the background, and that is just kind of humming along. And you can see the characters getting more and more desperate as the story goes along. That's exactly how you should kind of, pace this kind of film. It's modernizing Hitchcock techniques just to put them into an action film. So it's incredibly well done. I have a question posed to all of you, because we know Tom Cruise wants to film in space. Would he direct it himself? Would he go with McQuarrie, or would he go with Kaczynski?
It's Doug Liman, isn't it? I think
Doug Liman? Is it already announced, or is it?
Yeah, I don't know the ins and outs of it because I thought they were filming dates, but there's not. There was a weird conspiracy that it's actually Dead Reckoning Part 2, which clearly isn't.
That'd be
But
hilarious.
I believe it's a Doug Liman film that will maybe shoot after Dead Reckoning Part 2's wrapped and out. I don't know. But again, Doug Liman, it's someone he's worked with before. He brings on the same directors, and
You're right.
the only thing I'll
Doug
say,
Liman.
completely irrelevant to this review, but the fact that Tom Cruise isn't in Apex, which is the new Joseph Kosinski F1 film. I don't know if anyone's heard about this, starring Brad Pitt. That looks, I mean, Bruckheimer's producing, of course, who's produced Top Gun Maverick as well. That's like the one film I don't understand how it got greenlit that Tom Cruise isn't. I know he did Days of Thunder, and I know it's got its fans. But I think Tom Cruise apparently joked to Bruckheimer, like, if he needs him in a role, he'd love to get him in. And I'm saying, like, surely that was offered to Tom Cruise before Brad Pitt, and he just had to decline because of Mission Impossible. That's my only belief, because that literally is like the spiritual successor to Top Gun Maverick. Very off topic, but yeah, I just wanted to bring that. But do you have anything else to say on McQuarrie? Because we'll talk about the story after. I know we spoke about a few little bits.
I mean, I've already, not really on McQuarrie, but if everyone's good to move on, this mission is pretty much impossible. I know throughout the entire series there are some where it's like definitely easy to avoid. I think Mission Impossible 2 is the biggest kind of killer for that. It's an easily avoidable mission. But this one,
but it is just a normal mission. It's just a normal mission, though, isn't it? It's the only mission film where he isn't suddenly not an IMF person.
Yeah. This film, it sets its limitations very high. It sets its stunts very high, and because of that, it does become a very impossible mission, or at least unbelievably improbable. But the fact that the film is so well shot and so well acted, and you're so engrossed into the universe at this point, and the stunts are actually done in this film, it's not CGI, you believe the improbability, and that's what makes it an impossible mission. I mean, take, for example, the Halo jump at the start, and everything like that. The first time that's been put onto, film in that way, and it's just insanity that they were able to film something like that. Apply the storyline to the stunts as well. Something as simple as the bombs at the end, having to time it bang on with kind of the cutting of the cords taking out of the pin. That ain't happening. There's no way. Do you bet on Tom Cruise being able to speed climb up a cliff just to be able to stop the bomb in 10 seconds? Not a chance. So, yeah, definitely an impossible mission on this one.
I agree. I think they were almost realizing at a certain point the audience might not think this is impossible, which is why they introduce all the bomb stopping material there with the double switches and the
boring
key.
ending if we stopped the bomb.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, we just have to have a shootout and that'll resolve everything.
It's a fact of was it Benji who brings up, we should stop it on 2, and they're like, no, let's stop it on 1.
That is to me the moment where they're like, okay, we have to earn the impossible. That's how we do it. I think one of the genius things about this script is if you ask me to break down the specific details of John Lark and this identity, I'm like, I don't know if I can do that. But it's kind of like the Bond movies. And, I'm a huge Bond fan, a bigger Bond fan in terms of my life journey than Mission Impossible fan. But the Bond movies have absurd plots. That does not matter. It's more about the world you're inhabiting, the energy they're bringing, the character invention, all of those sorts of elements. And that is kind of what I apply to Mission Impossible as well. These ones, unlike Bond, though, are much more propulsive action pictures beginning to end. So the question is more, am I carried along on the journey without being constantly disrupted by kind of plot messiness? That is not a problem in this movie. So it is incredibly efficient. And things like the John Lark identity and all these various turns and twists are basically just there to keep the audience off balance. It doesn't really matter in terms of putting that much thought into them. So I think they serve their function. But it's probably not going to be, on par with Tinker, Tailor, Soldier, Spy when you're putting up the great espionage scripts of all time.
I mean, you just think about the first one, the De Palma film, and just how labyrinthian that is at times, trying to figure out people's motivations and all that sort of stuff. They've fine-tuned what an impossible mission can look like by this point. They know how to deliver a sort of heart-racing action flick with some spy, flavoring put on top, basically. But this is boiling it down. It is an action flick, much like the Bonds are really just action flicks with a bit of spy stuff thrown into it. But I think by this point they've perfected their own formula, and so in terms of it being an impossible mission, yes, it's pretty damn impossible from the get-go. Just to be that accurate of a shot when he's doing that around the corner, shoots Benji. That's a lot of impossibilities already, and that's very early on in the film. Having is it Wolf Blitzer or whoever it is doing the news report in the room next door? Well, it turns out it is actually Benji, but still, there's a lot of, and also the acting of Tom Cruise pretending to be like as the world's being blown up and trying to sell it to this guy, and I'm just 10 minutes in pointing out impossibilities. It's a very impossible mission. Congratulations, you've done a Mission Impossible film, but the story itself, it's by the by. We're here for the cool stunts. We're here to see our team get back together, and it's all great in those respects.
And I think that's where I'm kind of sitting this, that they know now, and this is the big thing. You go back to Mission Impossible 1, right? And I think Brian De Palma said this, that it went from a TV series about a group of people to a Tom Cruise-led film, so he had to kill off the team. And as evolution's gone by, it's now gone back to, yes, it's a Tom Cruise one, but there is a team, and people really like this team. And it's quite interesting that when you get to the climax in this film, it's almost, yes, we've got, I think it's the 15-minute bomb countdown. It goes for 22 minutes on screen, but it's because it's all happening at the same time. And if you said someone, cut the Rebecca Ferguson stuff, everyone's going to say, no, we like Rebecca Ferguson. We like a character. We want to see what's going on. There's a character in the arc in there, going back to Rogue Nation of Solomon Lane. Okay, get rid of the Benji, Ving Rhames, and Julia stuff. No, we need them as well because they're part of the parcel. And I think what McQuarrie's done he's been able to nail that team aspect alongside Ethan Hunt. And it's really fascinating how this series has evolved back into the team state, which heading into part 1 next week, I am nervous that could they off a character that we've grown to love over the last few years.
Sure. Why not?
Again,
they have to, right?
Those early films where it was a new cast every time, as much as that worked, that team dynamic has really helped carry and push this forward. And I think that's what's working really well with this, and kind of moving from the Impossible Mission stuff, even talking the characters in this, I would argue in this film, Ethan Hunt, now people, I think he gets an unfair dressing online, the character of Ethan Hunt. I know everyone says it's Tom Cruise, but you know it's Tom Cruise. But there are films where he has very good character arcs, and I would say on paper, that this sounding horrible, this isn't going to be the best Ethan Hunt film. Not by a long shot. And I think maybe is it because of the team dynamic, maybe because of the story points they're doing. This is maybe the best Tom Cruise Mission Impossible film in terms of a Tom Cruise film, in terms of the action, the stunts, etc., etc. But I don't mind that because I'm going to the cinema at this point in time, 6 films in, as you said, Scott, to see the action. It's like a Bond film. The very weird, and I don't want to get into an off-point tangent. Online now, there seems to be this horrendous debate of, people only, Mission Impossible is ripping off Bond films. It's Tom Cruise just doing Bond stunts. And I'm like, it's Tom Cruise wanting to do a stunt. He hasn't watched Octopussy and been like, you know what? I saw Bond do this, so I've waited 35 years to also hang off the back of a plane. It is
I want
not
my
that
own
at all.
all-time high.
And it's just one of those where he's so committed to a stunt, to an idea, to something he wants to do. He's going to go and do it. And also, there's nothing wrong with you going to the cinema to wanting to watch a Tom Cruise film. We go to the cinema to watch a James Bond film, the character of James Bond. Maybe we're not going to go to watch Ethan Hunt, but you're going to go to watch the lead actor doing some crazy stuff. And they've earned that from us, the audience, as the character of James Bond has earned people going back to flock to see the newest Bond films. It's to me, at least with Bond, it's the closest I get to patriotism, which sounds pathetic. But in terms of the British industry, Bond is right up there. Couldn't care much about other stuff. But
I just want to jump in with that sort of online debate for a second, because Cam and I spend our free time talking about spy movies, and so we have a little bit of insight on that. And the whole concept of Mission Impossible is stealing from Bond, and Jason Bourne is stealing from Bond. it's all ludicrous stuff. I mean, Bond has been on the back foot since about 2006, and then before then, it'd been on the back foot since 1995. It hadn't really pushed the envelope in quite a long time. And one thing I've learned over these last 3 years of talking about spy movies is that Bond does push the boat out, and it does sort of push the sort of action genre forward from time to time. But what it is actually doing a lot of the time is taking from elements around it at the time, its contemporaries, and making it slightly better, or doing its own Bond spin on things. Go all the way back to like the 60s films. Some of the elements that people praise from things like You Only Live Twice were in spy films of other spy films 2 or 3 years before. The Volcano, for instance, was in a Flint film, a James Coburn Flint film a year before. It's taken from something and made it better. This whole concept that Mission Impossible is stealing, no, Mission Impossible has found its own voice and perfected its own formula. No one's taking from anyone else. Calm down, Bond fans.
I would also argue like Mission Impossible and John Wick are the best things that could happen to Bond fans, because it suddenly scares the Bond producers that they have to work harder. And that's when you suddenly get this, like, okay, we need to aim for a bigger action sequence, because they can't rest on their laurels, because the marketplace is now demanding a certain level of spectacle. So I would say, if anything, when we get this Bond relaunch, they're going to be looking real closely at John Wick 4 and whatever happens in Dead Reckoning Part 1 and going, okay, to compete in this marketplace, we need to raise our game.
We need to do real stunts. We need someone, a leading man of Hollywood, shall we say. Let's bring in Jeremy Renner. He could reboot our franchise. And,
and it's all right though, and this is it. And I think for me, at least with Bond, and the way I think the big screen experience. I mean, I always talk about the cinema. The most important thing, when we do reviews, I'm recommending the film alongside the premise of going to watch it on the big screen. Modern audiences, post-COVID, still, it's not the same as it was. Of course it wasn't. Because I think not people took it for granted. Yes, we can get into the boring discussion about streaming, etc., etc., etc. But the reality is, you need to convince people to go to the cinema. You need to get them to give them the reason to go, other than the fact it's a Bond film. Why are they going to watch this one over something else also coming out? And to me, that's what the Bond producers need. And that is what Tom Cruise has absolutely nailed. Certainly post-COVID, whether it's Maverick, holding firm, not selling it to streamers, Dead Reckoning, you can read whatever reports you want about him being upset about Oppenheimer on IMAX. If you look at the IMAX numbers, on these big blockbusters, the IMAX percentage is the highest they've ever been, because people are now going for the experience of these films. And Bond needs that. And there's nothing wrong with learning from the films out around it. I mean, Bond's history is not taking stuff, not at all, but Bond has always been influenced contextually by so many films around the times they've come out, and there's nothing wrong with that. I just think certain people grew up in their eras and maybe they didn't know when they're younger, like I wouldn't have known what was popular, what wasn't. But Bond was Bond, so that's always been going back to that. Very different tangent, but a great point to bring up. And kind of sticking with this, moving on past Ethan Hunt, we want to talk about the team. We've mentioned them as a whole. I wouldn't say, we spoke about Luther and Benji not killing them off. I want to talk about Ilsa specifically with Rebecca Ferguson, the first leading lady to return in a Mission Impossible film. Once again, if it's what's the saying? If it ain't broke, don't fix it, or the way around. I can't remember.
Yeah,
that's it.
I love her in this series. I think she's an incredible actress, and I think what the Mission films did very well. I think they watched The White Queen, which was a BBC drama that she was in when they cast her. I love the fact that she didn't pop up in another big franchise and they're like, let's nab her and use her in this. I'm not even making that as a dig at Bond for Leia to do either at all, actually, now just that loud. But she feels like from the get-go from that last film, she's part of this. And I remember watching this film, the question was, okay, they're bringing her back. Why? Why Rebecca Ferguson? Why Ilsa? Aside from the fact the audience took to her, the audience loved it. It's helped kickstart an incredible Hollywood career so far. Of course, going on to star in Dune Part 1 and 2. What are your thoughts on the concept that we're still getting, I guess this sort of segues slightly as the villains ever so slightly, we've still got remnants of the Syndicate, which means, of course, the British creating that inadvertently in the last film. Of course, they've got their spy who's not out of the game. Just curious on your thoughts as ways to bring her back, because I thought it was a fine way to bring her back. And also, the fact she shot this film completely pregnant, I think when it wraps, she was 7 months pregnant, is incredible. And if anyone's curious, at the London premiere for this, she turned up. She'd given birth like 4 days before. She turned Paris 2 days after she gave birth, and London 4 days later. She was signing, she was meeting fans, and she wasn't doing photos for obvious reasons. She'd just given birth. It's a miracle she'd done a red carpet. And they did tell people, please don't ask for photos, but it didn't stop a load of idiots, as you do get those at the red carpets. But just
George, stop asking for photos.
Yeah, George.
I didn't. I still haven't been able to get one. I did ask this time, but I think she was drunk. But I will talk about that. No joke. Anyone go find the interviews.
Is it because, and genuinely, did she do the red carpets because Tom Cruise is running a film cult around this franchise? And people just kind of have to do what he says, otherwise they lose their membership.
It's a great... I think with these films, and I know the cast say this, I'm not an actor, obviously. If I was working on a Mission Impossible film, and let's say hypothetically I was an actor, you would have this, like, not inner conscience, you'd have this... what's the word I'm thinking of? You know when you unconsciously approach something, right? You would just be on your A game because it's a Mission Impossible film. And if you were going to do something physical, you'd be like, it's Mission Impossible. Like, everyone's doing it. So, and it's the actors, it's not the doubles, etc., etc. I feel that that's their approach to even promoting it. Like, look at this wild thing. Tom Cruise doing 7 red carpets. Yeah, I'm going to join them. And it feels like they're always there together, the group. I don't think they've all done all 7 red carpets, but it feels, I don't know the right word, but
he's bringing the energy, and therefore you kind of have to match that energy.
Yeah, it's like they're not in awe of him, because that sounds a bit too extreme, but there's this vibe that if I was involved, I'd want to like be there with them to like celebrate it, as pathetic as that sounds.
No, I get it. I 100% get it.
I think we're missing out on something very important here. And that is contractual obligation.
There we go.
I mean, there's a reason.
It in the fine print.
There's a reason why Jennifer Lawrence is doing people's podcasts and the guy show where they eat chicken wings for some strange reason to promote a film that no one likes whatsoever.
It got pretty good reviews.
No, it didn't.
I want to watch it.
Said it was
I want to watch it. I want to watch it so I can.
I've seen nothing but bad reviews. Okay,
I think it's like 60% or something on Rotten Tomatoes.
I've seen very average reviews. Nothing.
How many rated R comedies do we get these days? I will give it that. I've not seen it yet.
I will also say,
Scott,
this year
called Strays, which is all dogs.
That's true. Scott, I will say, don't poo-poo the 60% Rotten Tomatoes rating when you're championing Mission Impossible 2.
Yeah, don't go there.
Okay, I disappear.
I'm going to pull this back around, back onto Rebecca Ferguson. Yeah, great that she came back. Once again, a mystery enigma of a woman in the films. And I like the fact that I still feel like we don't know everything about her character. I still feel like there is some devil hidden in the closet and stuff like that. That kind of, the same vibe that Léa Seydoux gave off in, No Time to Die, kind of, there's still some stuff under the surface. She is still not revealing all, and I guess we'll find out with the films coming out whether anything else comes, bubbles to the surface that, Ethan's like, God damn it, not again, kind of like. But no, I feel like the evolution of the films, having the apostles be kind of the kind of not even cast off, just kind of the evolution of the syndicate, means that it's right for her character to come back, and it's right for Solomon Lane to come back as well, just so that you can have that continuation of those characters and have that continuation of that story. So I've found her great in the film, and I'm intrigued to see what she does if she's officially a member of the team in the next film, because she's still kind of on the bubble, isn't she? She's not quite, in there with all of them at all times. She's just kind of like dips in, dips out, sometimes on their side, sometimes double aging them. So,
I did just want to say, Scott and I have talked about the Bourne movies. We've covered them all on our podcast. And one of the things that we got a lot of amusement of was how they would transition, like, Treadstone. Now it's Blackbriar. Now it's Lark. Now it's Iron Hand. And it's like the way it was always kind of the same thing. They just gave it a new name. And that's how I feel about the Apostles coming out of the Syndicate. I'm like, sure. Like, whatever. It's basically the same thing.
It's fine. Next film, it's going to be exactly the same set of villains, just given another name. It'll be the offcasts of a couple of people from the Apostles have decided to make, I don't know, like, the
I like
religion
it.
or
I don't know
something
why. I just
The
like it.
triumvirate.
The
Yeah.
Legion.
The Legion. There we go.
Legion.
We're
That's
predicting the
good.
plot straight away.
But as for Ilsa Faust, I think this character, what makes her work so well is that she is probably the only co-star of this franchise. I think the only character that stands like toe to toe with Ethan Hunt. And I think that was a problem for a long time. I don't want to, maybe I shouldn't say problem, but it was like you had Ethan Hunt and he's surrounded by his supporting characters, whether it's like Jonathan Rhys Meyers and Maggie Q in Mission Impossible 3 or something.
Jeremy Renner was literally brought in to be that person.
Yes, but very quickly is like, Jeremy, know your place. Whereas with Ilsa Faust, it was someone who really went toe to toe with him and was someone that upped his game. So I think that is an essential ingredient, and I think might have played a larger role in this movie were it not for the pregnancy. I'm not really sure, but I will be very interested to see how the evolution that continues into the new films. Here, though, even though it's a little bit more so her being paired off with the other characters to solve problems by the end, I think her scenes with Hunt are very strong. I don't know that I buy the romantic connection, but that's just because I don't buy any Tom Cruise romantic connections in any movie made past, like, I don't know, the late 90s.
I don't know what more I could really add on Rebecca Ferguson's Ilsa Faust. I just think she's a bit of fun energy to have in the films, because the Tom Cruise character is so like, he's a face. He's a good guy. He's pure, red, white, and blue. He's a vanilla ice cream. He's great. But
Who is he?
well, I don't know. He's Ethan Hunt,
changes.
whatever that means. Yeah.
Changes movie to movie.
Yeah. She's like the sprinkles you put on the ice cream. She's a little bit different, just to add some flavor. I mean, I'd like to see more of her more fleshed out, but we haven't had that yet. But I appreciate her dynamic when it comes into these films, the ones she's been in so far. And I can only imagine the fun they could have in the next two.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the big things heading into the reckoning is that the fact she's coming back again, and it is like fully fledged member of the team. And I know that people make what they want off trailers. There's certain eye patches. Apologies if someone can hear a car alarm, by the way. I don't know if you can hear it on the stream, but I can hear it through my headphones. Don't know whose house it is.
Really quiet, but not loud.
That's fine. Maybe it's Tom Cruise trying to hunt me down after I made some comments he didn't like. Who knows? But kind of from Rebecca Ferguson, I really want to talk about the return of Julia. Of course, the wife from Mission Impossible 3, the whole Ghost Protocol stuff with her being alive at the end of the day. Now, obviously, we've been rewatching these each week. So when I watched Fallout at the cinema, I don't think I rewatched them at all. I think I'd rewatched them all for Rogue Nation. And it was like, oh, his wife's come back, great. Now, having this on a rewatch, I thought was incredible. Because what I kind of mentioned that script deferred, and maybe some people think this is too easy, but I love the fact this was set up in clear daylight. The really awkward Luther, Rebecca Ferguson dad's speech, like, there's only two women he's ever cared about on this planet. Here's this amazing speech about his wife. By the way, you're the number 2, and he's listening behind the post over there. And it's like, okay, great. That's a great way, if the audience haven't seen the other ones, they might have known that he was married. They might not have seen this. And it's when they get to the, oh God, I forgot the name of the country they're meant to be in.
Kashmir, isn't it?
Kashmir. When they get to Kashmir, and it's just this amazing moment of where, here's a plan, let's do this. And then Julia turns up. And Wes Bentley. I'm sorry, but whenever Wes Bentley pops up in something, I can't get over his amazing beard in the Hunger Games. I saw that when I was 16. I was like, Wes Bentley in him. I think the first time I saw it at the cinema, Wes Bentley's name was in the credits. I was like, Wes Bentley's in a Mission Impossible film. This is as insane as Nick Offerman and Hannah Waddingham for Dead Reckoning Part 2. Here you go. Scott's just found that out.
That was
I'm trying to picture that. That's okay. It's
going to be fantastic if they get the scene right. I don't know what it's going to be, but Nick Offerman in Mission Impossible is perfect. The Julia stuff I love, because we'll get to the villains ever so shortly, but I love Solomon Lane in this. I love his wispy voice. I love Sean Harris's performance. I love the fact he signed up for one film and didn't know why he was coming back for the second, but he did either way. The whole finale, we mentioned the Impossible Mission earlier, and this is where the Ethan Hunt art, to me, really becomes a thing for this. There's this really, really brief moment when Tom Cruise realizes that Julia's there when he sees her, and the film almost pauses, and you've had that intro at the start, the really weird opening with them getting the vowels and Solomon Lane being the guy doing it, which was a great setup for the nuke stuff that was going to come. And again, they do the fake nuke at the start, so you don't think of it again. But there's this brief moment of the performance when Ethan clocks and the team clocks everything in just this 1 second, and it is her medical team. It's how they set the finale up, and on the rewatch, that just did something to me this time that I hadn't seen from it in the other viewings. And I think it's because I've rewatched the others that is the character of Ethan Hunt. He now knows it's not just him saving the world. He needs to save his wife again. And it's the person he lost in the sense to try and protect her. And it's very simple storytelling, but I think the way they build up to it, the way it's delivered, I just think it's perfect. Am I over hyping it? I keep forgetting the words I want to use, but
it's a very nice moment.
It humanizes the finale, as ridiculous as that sounds for a film where it's going to be a helicopter chase.
My one kind of I don't want to say downside to the film, but my one kind of critique of the film would be that they should have killed a character at the start for this to hit twice as hard at the end. Because that realization of I'm going to lose someone again, someone even closer at the end of this mission, and I lost someone close at the start, I feel like that would fuel his anger and fuel his kind of mission further towards the end, and he would be fully focused in. And it's a nice moment in the film. It does slow it down. It's good to have the character back. One thing that I'm really disappointed about, and I don't think I realized it at the time, probably because I'm not a big fan of the franchise or wasn't as big a fan of the franchise when it came out. I rewatched the trailer because this trailer I remember there being quite a lot of hype behind it. I don't know if it was the start of kind of, social media and stuff like that, but I know that, they used, what's it called? Friction.
Imagine Dragons. It's the sync of the song to the Mission Impossible theme in sync with the Henry Cavill punching.
Exactly. And a massive hype for the trailer and stuff like that. They reveal that she's back in this film in the trailer. And I was so disappointed when I watched the trailer today, coming into reviewing the film, just to see her face. And I was like, oh, well, that was spoiled. People would have known that she was coming back, So it's really kind of like, shucks. They couldn't have just, kept her in and, hidden her away and stuff like that. Instead, they kind of ruined it for anyone who had seen the trailer and knew that she was going to be coming back at some point in the film.
I think they'd announced it, though. They'd announced it, I think,
before
the filming started, that she was going to be back.
Did they have to?
Maybe it would have leaked. Because the thing of these films is that everyone always catches the stunts being shot, don't they?
But here's the thing. Leaks are only for people in the know. Like, for your general moviegoers who watch a trailer, who don't follow movies that closely, that's a big moment for them, and that's immediately taken away from them if they've seen the trailer. And a lot of people see trailers nowadays before seeing the film, but they won't follow movie news and who's leaked and who's in the film and stuff like that.
On the Julia front, I mean, firstly, I just want to, something just popped to my mind, but you're talking about that dream at the start. Is Ethan Hunt a precog? Because he sees the entire film happening in his dreams. I don't know. Is this a prequel to Minority Report? I'll leave that to you two guys to put together. But I mean, she's there to sort of give you the human cost, because you see a lot in these franchise films. Fast 10 recently did it beautifully, in my mind. You get a bomb going off at the Vatican, and the news report says, "Luckily, no one died." And I just think, great stuff. Great. So at least like she's going to die, and so you can be like, okay, well, that's a character I know. I don't want her to die. So go, Ethan, go and save the world. But in terms of what George was saying, I don't know if I've felt that deep rooted connection you had to it there, but it's great. It added something to you. But for me, it was about just sort of giving a face to the human cost.
Yeah. I think it's also they want to humanize Ethan Hunt. How?
That's hard.
How?
That's hard.
He was married once, many years ago.
Yeah, and they want to build in, I think, an emotional hook for the movie. And this movie works entirely as spectacle. If you didn't have the emotional punch of that third act, you would have an incredibly sensational action movie. But I think that emotional hook kicking in with the Julia stuff at the end there just kind of takes it up that next level and is why it just worked that extra plateau up where audiences were talking about it that much more. So I think it's effective. I'm glad they did pay off this character. I don't know that I need to see Julie in future Mission Impossible movies. I also think they specifically brought her back so that she could give her blessing for Ilsa to step in as a potential love interest in the future.
Yeah.
Could work. I could see it. Maybe we'll find out in a couple of weeks. But it's a good point because again, that Ving Rhames scene is the whole like you're the. I mean, Ving Rhames in this film. I'm not going to talk about too much, but I love the fact he just turns up to every Mission Impossible film, and it's like part of the family. He doesn't do the PR, by the way. He doesn't do the premieres with them. I just love the fact like Ving Rhames is going to turn up. Goes protocol. He turned up right at the end for that final scene, whether you wanted him in or not. And it's just great that he's one of the four only returning cast members, and he's still doing it. And he's got this exact same job as Simon Pegg in it. But we spoke a lot about the characters. We're going to talk villains quickly. We made some comments about the Apostles, the Syndicate. Sean Harris and Solomon Lane, the first returning Mission Impossible villain, I guess we could say. Whether you count Kittredge as one, we'll find out in Dead Reckoning Part 1. I absolutely love this story with the villains. I love the fact in Rogue Nation that Tom Cruise has his equal, the anti-IMF as they call the Syndicate. And I love the fact with Sean Harris, and I don't mean to slag off Bond and Spectre, because Christoph Waltz is a phenomenal actor. I love the fact that, I know this series isn't as big as Bond per se in 2015 when Rogue Nation came out at the same time as Spectre, actually, ironically, same year. But Sean Harris, you know, is theatre actor, TV actor, had done films, has said in interviews he never saw himself as a film actor. And I love the fact that their evil villain organisation wasn't an A-lister as the main villain. It wasn't an Oscar-winning actor. You know, in the Mission Impossible films, bar Philip Seymour Hoffman, they've never really, I guess John Voight, of course, as well, they've never gone for the really big-name villains, which I respect to a point. I'm not to criticise any of us. I'm probably missing someone else.
Poor Doug Ray Scott, just getting crap.
Yeah.
Hey,
right
that job, Mission Impossible 2 cost him Wolverine, but gave us Hugh Jackman. So didn't he really lose? Not to if he's watching,
Cinema won that day.
Cinema won a lot for that film. You know, Ian McKellen as Gandalf, thanks to Mission Impossible 2 as well.
Yeah.
It just gets better and better. See.
And Taken 3 got a much cheaper actor for their villain.
Well, there you go.
But it is interesting with this, and I kind of want to know your thoughts. I guess this kind of tees him up with Henry Cavill playing the character of Walker, also John Locke, also actually real name August Walker, which apparently Henry Cavill didn't know because the script just calls him Walker, which is a terrible name to call him August Walker. Again, amazing beard stash. I'll keep giving him credit where it's due. What are your thoughts on the villains, the Syndicate plot, the Apostles, everything? Because it's easier to group them into two, but I think I've got nothing really eloquent to say other than the fact I just love them. I love Sean Harris's wispy voice, which I can't imitate or do well at all. And I love the fact that we're going to obviously speak the obvious. Henry Cavill reloads his fists in a film, gets a sound effect for those fists being reloaded, and is pretty phenomenal in this film from start to end for the physical set pieces, for the action side of it, going out the way villains always should in these films, a ridiculous over the top. He gets a hook through the top of his head after being burned by engine oil, and not only goes off a cliff with a hook in his head, falls into the explosion of the said helicopter dragging him into it. That's a hell of a way to go.
That's a good bar to clear, you know, for villain deaths.
And Solomon Lane is still alive. Solomon Lane is still alive.
I'm very happy about Solomon Lane still being alive because you need that reoccurring villain. I feel like he will be probably off in part 1 or part 2. You know, I feel like that's going to happen at some stage. That's just kind of on the cards. But I'm liking the continuity of the villain here. It's a continuation of the story from the previous film, so of course you need a bit of continuity in there. And as far as a villain is concerned, Sean Harris plays the villain so well. It's just the quiet, calm demeanor that he brings to the role. You know, the immediate kind of evil villainy and destruction that he can bring to anyone at any chance, and he makes things so personal when they don't have to be. And that's the whole point of this film. He's making it personal. They could just set off the bombs and, you know, be done with it. But no, he wants to make it personal. He wants Ethan to suffer for it. He wants Ethan as like a personal vendetta for kind of capturing him and stopping his previous plans. So I'm completely okay with not only him being kept alive at the end of this film, but him being brought back for the film itself and being able to be that kind of baseline continuation. The fact that part of the plot revolves around having to rescue him, so they're able to kind of move forwards as well. And who we got, the White Widow as well, involved in kind of Vanessa Kirby as one of the kind of side villains who's coming back for the next film as well. So you've got a few kind of villains in here which will have some continuity, which is excellent. But as far as kind of Walker is concerned, you've kind of nailed it on the hammer straight away. He reloads his fists. You can't compete with that. Like, you absolutely cannot compete with Henry Cavill reloading his fists. It's just whoever came up with that idea, whether it was him himself, whether
unintentional, I think, by him on the day. I think that's what they say. Don't they? Like, he just did it, prepping.
That may have been the best piece of improv in cinema history. I'm not going to lie.
It's funny that with Walker, that is the iconic moment. But I think my favorite may be actually when he's in the chopper and he looks next and sees like Ethan in the chopper next to him. It just does like the very resigned, like, okay, and just turns and like grabs the machine gun and starts firing. Oh, like that is a genius moment. And I think it's really important to note here that this is the moment, I think, where Mission Impossible starts eating James Bond's lunch, which is that you had in the Craig era the creation of Blofeld, or bringing back Blofeld, I should say, the Christoph Waltz version Inspector. And it satisfied no one. It was Christoph Waltz talking about meteorites or something like that, wearing slippers.
Cuckoo.
Yeah, and saying cuckoo a lot. And people going like, okay. And you look at how at the same time they were building out of Rogue Nation Solomon Lane and continuing down that journey. They had a personal element of what Solomon Lane wants to do. He wants to attack Ethan Hunt's, personal life. That's the sort of stuff they built into their Blofeld during the Craig era that none of it worked.
It would have worked if his name wasn't Blofeld and
it wasn't his stepbrother
around Blofeld, and it wasn't his step.
Exactly.
There were so many things. If Solomon Lane was dropped into the Bond films as part of that recurring villains, wow, just wow.
Can you imagine a universe though where like Ethan Hunt and Solomon Lane are stepbrothers?
Oh. Spoiler for Dead Reckoning Part 2.
It was me, Ethan, the architect of all your pain.
It was me all along.
Even the idea that the syndicate was created by British intelligence, like that's a better Bond villain. I mean, I know that British intelligence created the virus that's actually been used in No Time to Die, but it's like,
and we did make Nine Eyes and Spectre as well,
and. Yeah, I think Mission Impossible was like you said, and even the fact with Rogue Nation, right? That the British idea is we fucked up, guys. We've got to get this thing deleted to protect us. That's as British as it's going to get right now.
Yeah. And to me, like that Solomon Lane choice, like they are running the show right now and having this recurring mastermind villain. How to do it, especially in this particular time period. I think Solomon Lane, Sean Harris, the casting was perfect. They set him up incredibly well in Rogue Nation and have just run with him. I was actually like kind of bummed when I don't see him on the list of the primary cast of Dead Reckoning. I don't often demand to see the same villain in 3 movies in a row. That shows to me that he is working so incredibly well that I want to see where that character is going. And Walker, there's obviously a lot of uncertainty with his role throughout the movie. Is he CIA? Who exactly is this character? He is the Bond henchman. They are playing up this hulking size of him opposite Tom Cruise the whole time. Mm-hmm. And when you get to the end and he gets half his face torn away with the jet fuel, he becomes like the disfigured Bond henchman that you have the big physical altercation with at the end of the movie. Typically in those Bond movies, the big guy goes off a cliff. And that is what happens to the Henry Cavill character. And he does it in a way that outdoes what any Bond movie has done with, as we've all said, the hook to the head is absolutely incredible. So they are kind of taking the Bond elements and saying, hey, let's do it one better. And so I think it's just really, really astonishing what they do with the villains, because this is a series I've long admired. But I don't walk out of a lot of Mission Impossible movies wowed by the villains. Really only Philip Seymour Hoffman in Part 3.
For me, I may not be able to enjoy and join in on this sort of parade In fact, I might rain on your Solomon parade. I should
Ooh.
have said
Well,
Solomon.
you get
I
for
should have
Solomon
said Solomon
Grundy or
rain.
something then.
Yeah.
No, I should have said Solomon rain on your parade. That should have been the pun.
That was a good one.
Yeah. I like the guy. I'm not sure I necessarily needed him back. I prefer more sort of active antagonists. He's a little bit more passive in this film. In terms of like a comparison point for a lot of people, I would say From Russia with Love. Solomon is very much the Rosa Klebb, whereas Walker is very much the Red Grant. I walk out of From Russia with Love remembering Red Grant. I walk out of Fallout remembering Walker. I don't really remember Solomon. What Solomon is your 100% your like trailer snapshot guy who gives you the lines you can play in the trailer, like Mr. White Inspector and a kite dancing in a hurricane, that sort of stuff. He gives you those gravelly lines you can use, like Ethan, which is great for a trailer. But I don't know, like I feel like he almost could have been anyone in this film. I was really paying more attention to the fist cocking of Henry Cavill.
There's nothing wrong with that. And that's the thing, though. If you come out of this film and you've still got that to talk about, we haven't had that with other films, bar Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Me and Cam walked out the cinema just doing this with each other, just cocking our fists, and then we got arrested. So yeah, it was weird.
But trust me, like I just can't. I just keep going back to the beard stash. It's like unreal. And no one else could probably pull it off on the planet. It's like Rooster in Top Gun Maverick. If you tried, you couldn't do it as much as you think you can. You weren't Miles Teller. Sorry, people at home. And that became a thing. And that's what Henry Cavill's done. He's had this magnificent impact. And if the future doesn't work out for him in the concept of becoming Bond, he will always have been in one of the greatest action films, in one of the best action series of Mission Impossible, in a very memorable role. Which is magnificent. And kind of moving on from the villains, because I appreciate that we're running for time as well. We're going to talk about the score. Now, these have been very interesting, these Mission Impossible films, because we've had some of the biggest names in the industry. You've had Danny Elfman, you've had Hans Zimmer, you've had Michael Giacchino. And that's 4 out of the first 5. And then Joe Kramer, of course, the 5th one, who'd worked with Chris McQuarrie on a few of the films. In comes Lorne Balfe, who... I'm just going to say it. It's the best Mission Impossible score. It might as well be a Hans Zimmer. If Hans Zimmer did Mission Impossible today, this is exactly how it would sound. I know Lorne Balfe has worked with Hans Zimmer on other scores in the past. And I will say this, Chris McQuarrie, you absolutely nailed the choice of hiring. The fact that Lorne Balfe's returning, the second composer after Giacchino to be doing more Mission Impossible films. I have had this soundtrack played a lot over the last 5 years. I have my own Best of Mission Impossible playlist. It's Friction by Imagine Dragons, and then it's basically this soundtrack, which really shows how little I've listened to the others, if I'm being completely honest. Ironically, the vinyl box set behind me. But I'm a big fan of this score. And again, everyone that knows me knows George has said it's compared it to Hans Zimmer. That's enough for him to be talking about stuff like that. If it's Zimmer-esque, I'm going to be game for it. But I just think this gravitates the film. You get to some of the big set pieces. You get to the free fall sequence. You get to Escape Through Paris. There's so many amazing set pieces, and the score delivers of all of it. And whether or not people think it's bad, it sounds like a Hans Zimmer score, I don't know. I'll be honest, I don't care. I think Mission Impossible has been well overdue a great score. I think Giacchino's work was good, but it's not... Again, I think if Giacchino did another Mission film today, it'd be very different. And I think he did the best of what he could, but Fallout, this has just been the game changer for me, the soundtrack. I don't know if anyone else has listened to it. I don't know if anyone else cares, but I just wanted to say that because it is magnificent. I'm very... And Chris McQuarrie's words to me, not me, not to mine, to anyone else, he said, if you liked Fallout score, Reckoning Part 1 takes it to a new level, which is very exciting from a soundtrack perspective.
Well, on multiple levels here, the fact that he's been asked back is, already kind of a good sign that the previous film was a good soundtrack, good score. But you don't need to listen to this score in isolation. This score works perfectly with the film. It's one of those where, sometimes a good score is one that just kind of blends into the background. You don't really notice it because it sets the kind of mood for the scenes and you don't really need to tune into it. With this is big, it's bombastic, it works with the stunts, it's in your face. It's kind of there. It makes you aware of it, and it raises the blood pressure and the tension with the scenes you're watching. It matches everything perfectly down to a T. It's a really, really well crafted score. and it's something that I immediately picked up on, kind of rewatch this time around. Like, oh wow, God, the score's really good in this film. Like, it really hits all the notes. It really goes for it. So, no, I agree with you. It is probably the best Mission Impossible score out there. I know that there's going to be an argument coming in for the CD down in the bottom corner for Mission Impossible 2, but no, for me at least, yeah, Fallout is the best score.
Now I know why
Yeah.
you want to hate me. I actually will just. Mine's really quick, Cam, and you can just jump in afterwards.
Go for it. No, please.
I don't tend to notice soundtrack, despite the fact I'm like a training musician. I don't tend to notice scores particularly. I don't listen to many scores at all, so I haven't really ever listened to this. A good score for me is one I don't notice, and I didn't notice this one, so I guess it gets a thumbs up. But I've never really paid it any attention, except for, of course,
I'm
The
shocked you
Master.
didn't notice the score in this film during like the action set pieces or anything.
I'm sure like I heard it, but I'm paying more attention to like the action direction or like how the stunt is staged and stuff like that. That's what sort of I'm trying to pick how they achieve that shot is usually what I'm looking at in any film.
Fair
Yeah,
enough.
I mean, this is a pretty musically accomplished series, which is not something people talk about. People will talk endlessly about the scores for the Bond films and how important they are and how crucial to getting across what a Bond movie is. But Mission Impossible is kind of the same thing, and I think the only bad Mission Impossible score is the second one, where I think Hans Zimmer makes some choices that have aged like. I'm not pointing.
I'll give it this.
I'm not pointing.
It's a very appropriate score to what John Woo's direction is.
Sure.
I mean, I think
but
if Hans Zimmer did another one, it would literally be this one, like this exact thing. That's my theory, at least.
I'm not casting aspersions at the Mission Impossible 2 soundtrack, Scott, with its glorious Metallica and Limp Bizkit gems, but the score itself is pretty poor, I think. But no, this one to me it really works because it's so propulsive and it just works perfectly for what they are trying to get across. Like the Danny Elfman one, I actually really love as well with the first film, but it's a different type of energy. It wouldn't have worked with this movie. This one needs that kind of driving force behind it. The only time I get dragged out of the movie by this score is when they are setting up the extraction of Solomon Lane in the truck. The music is so close to the Dark Knight truck chase sequence that I'm like, okay. And I know that, Lorne Balfe, they're in trucks, and Lorne Balfe worked on The Dark Knight as well. He was in the music department on that score, working under Hans Zimmer. So I'm like, this is like almost too derivative. It's driving me crazy. But other than that, it's great.
It's fair, and it's nice to get a discussion with it because I absolutely love the soundtrack to that, and it does make me excited for Dead Reckoning. And there's so many little intricate themes, so I won't talk too much on the score. We're almost in, guys. So we're at the stunt section, and now we're not going to sit for ages talking stunts. There are many other podcasts that do stunts breakdowns and things like that, but we've got a couple of the big scenes if anyone wants to talk about them. And I'm going to jump in first about the Halo jump. Now, for some reason, heading into this film, I don't remember seeing anything about the Halo jump. And apparently, when I've been doing my research, it's been everywhere. It's been spoken about loads at the time it came out. Mm-hmm. I don't know why. I don't really have any recollection of that leading up to it. All I seem to remember is the water. I call it the Dunkirk shot. I know it's not from Dunkirk, but they're now the industry is now fascinated with water scenes, putting a camera basically on the bit that's going to sink, so it looks very different. And I keep thinking of that shot with Solomon Lane. But the Halo jump blew me away watching it for the first time. And as we get with these series, the behind the scenes, the fact that one of the trailers for this new film was essentially just a behind the scenes feature is magnificent. That shows what people are going to watch. The Halo jump is one of. Is it weird to call it the most underrated Mission Impossible stunt? Because if I'm going to be honest with you, to me this is on par with the plane stunt and the Burj Khalifa, and not just for Tom Cruise. The cameraman, and if anyone's seen photos, the cameraman has an IMAX camera on his head. And he is jumping out of that plane with Tom Cruise. And Tom Cruise had to train for a year for this. It is remarkable how this was made. They shot it in, I forgot which country. It might be Abu Dhabi or Qatar, one of the Arab states that keeps buying football clubs. That's why I keep remembering them. they could only ever shoot it like 2 or 3 times. Apparently, it reached a point where the cast would turn up just to watch Tom Cruise do a 10,000-foot halo dive. I think it's amazing, and full credit to the VFX team as well to go from the deserts to making that Paris. It doesn't look. It looks like it has been shot properly. It looks like it is done over there. They could only shoot it at sunset because they needed the sunset for the footage. I think it's remarkable, and in a film that has unbelievable stunts. I mean, going credit to McQuarrie's direction, you could pick so many different action set pieces, and this could be any director's like best action scene they've ever shot in their life. And he's got 3 or 4 of them in this singular film. It's remarkable. But I'm just curious to what you guys might think on that, or if you want to talk about one of the other big set pieces.
Well, I'll stick to the Halo jump just for a short while. I remember seeing a clip floating around, probably Twitter, Reddit, with the filming of that scene, with kind of the camera kind of showing them jumping out of the plane and stuff like that, and the camera person having to jump, backwards to fall with Tom Cruise at the same time. Phenomenal piece of filmmaking. Absolutely insane. And I'm sure Tom Cruise, he'd talk to the stunt team and cook it up in his head. Okay, we're going to do a Halo jump. Let's go for it. Kind of thing. But he does some crazy stunts in this film. This is like the most stunt-heavy film to date. I mean, he broke his ankle on the jumping over the rooftops in London. I remember that being a big news story. The fact that he finished that scene as well, and that scene made it into the film itself is also hilarious. And then all of the helicopter kind of stuff towards the end with kind of they call it like the free fall of him tumbling down the rope. Just absolute madness. The things that he put himself through for this film. But what I said at the very start, talking about the direction, the way it's put to camera makes it believable. And that's down to Tom Cruise actually doing the stunts himself, and also just kind of the camera work and the team behind it, just making the shots look right. The right selection of shots, the right selection of where the camera should be and how to film it. And in every single sense of it in this film, they push the boundaries here, and they're going to push the boundaries in the next film, and they're going to push the boundaries in the next film. Like, because they're always pushing that bar higher, you're always just shocked and in awe and amazed at the things that they're able to do and put to cinema and put to screens. And I know the Burj Khalifa was massive. I know the plane stunt as well, hanging off the back of the plane, was massive. But this film, as far as their stunts were concerned, is the game changer. This is the one. This is the one where you truly are just sat there and you're going, how? How were they able to film all of this? How were they able to put this all together? How was Tom Cruise able to do this? And how were they able to do it in the shortest time gap between any of the Mission Impossible films?
Mm-hmm. And I mean, the Halo jump reminds me of kind of the good old days of the 70s, 80s Bond movies where they had their skydiving team. And you get like the opening to Moonraker and things like that, or the big Bond on the back of a plane in Octopussy. Those sorts of stunts, which kind of fell out of favor and you didn't really get going forward, especially once the CG age kicked in. And, you had really terrible looking stunts that, a lot of bad CG people flying around. And to me, this feels like hearkening back to that, but also raising what they can do on screen, because they, I believe, developed technology as well for the Halo helmet so that Tom Cruise's face could be seen at all times on camera for it. So that one is, maybe you're right, George. Like, maybe that is underrated in terms of Mission Impossible stunts, because it's in a movie packed with so many huge moments. And the broken leg thing he did got a lot of the press. And to me, the helicopter stunts is where I will always go back to with this movie, is because seeing it in that IMAX screen was so unbelievably immersive. And that's something I hear a lot. Filmmakers will say, oh, this movie is so immersive. Oh, the visuals, the action is going to be so immersive when you watch it. I've seen very, very few that actually delivered on that promise in the way that Fallout did with those helicopter sequences where you were getting vertigo. You felt every moment of it, but you were also completely bowled over by just like the physicality of Tom Cruise's performance, the stunt work. That moment where he falls down the rope on top of like the bag that it's carrying is just unbelievable. And building to that, the scene on the cliff at the end is just, it's perfection. Like, I don't know how heavily it was storyboarded, but if you told me every second of it was storyboarded specifically, I'd be like, I believe it. It seems like it took an unbelievable amount of planning to assemble that sequence. And I mean, Tom Cruise is so essential to it. We always say he's a great stuntman, but he's also a great actor at grounding this stuff. And I remember there was a quote Roger Ebert said about it was Sean Connery in Diamonds Are Forever. Not one of the better Bond movies. And it's the bit where he's in the moon buggy going across the desert. And he said, Connery never breaks in that moment. Like, you never have a sense that, like, he's winking at you. He just looks like, I believe that this is happening. And I think that that's something that, like, Tom Cruise does consistently. These are absurd circumstances that an audience could easily laugh and think, this movie's gone over the top. But Tom Cruise's conviction in every moment of it makes you believe it's happening.
It's interesting. I mentioned that that interview with Christian McQuarrie on the Empire podcast earlier on in this discussion, and he spoke about these sort of big set pieces, and he says like the important thing for these films is to have these in set pieces, and they're like 15-minute movies, and then you connect them all together. So these I think are like the crown jewels of any of the mission films. And just speaking about some of the ones I liked, George, I know you love the Halo jump. For me, that's just like a very seamless bit of editing there, like from wherever they filmed it to landing in Paris or whatever that sort of stage was. It's wonderfully shot and wonderfully put together. The London one has a special place in my heart just because I live here, and he's running around St. Paul's. It's like it's my old stomping ground. Like I just know where he's running. I haven't been on that roof, but I've been in the streets.
I was going to bring that up if you don't mind. So, friend of the channel, Elliot, who runs Hakuna Matata, did a great tweet the other day. He put the London foot chase in Mission Impossible Fallout so good, aided by the fact the geography lines up, which, you look at many, many American blockbusters that do London chases. I'm looking at you, 101 Dalmatians and the bike ride across London in 2 minutes. But he actually put, I used to work as a river tour guide, and it brought me a lot of joy to point the chase route out and the building where Tom Cruise broke his ankle. And then it ended at the Tate Museum, which is why I'd always look at it in a different way now. But Scott, with you, the resident Londoner on this, do you spot a few things like the drug? Because it is right. So many films get the geography of London wrong. I know it's a minor thing in the context of the film, but we know that Tom Cruise loves London. He shoots a lot of his films here. He's shooting the new ones here. I think even he would have the approach of like, I've got to run London as you actually would in these films. But sorry to divert. I just wanted to bring that tweet up.
No, I mean the geography always seemed right to me. They even shoot at St. Paul's, which we mentioned the Flash, and that's used at the end of the Flash where they're coming out of the courthouse. That is St. Paul's Cathedral. Doubles for that. So it's actually weird seeing the film. And this film also has a shot that's used in John Wick 4. So there's a lot of cool places they visit there in this film. The one for me, the stunt sequence is the helicopter chase. That's the one that really is like visceral. You feel like you're in that helicopter with Tom, and you are. I mean, people like Cam mentioned like motion sickness. I imagine people did feel a bit sick, especially if they went to like a 4DX showing, being thrown around by that helicopter, popcorn's just flying everywhere and stuff. Like, yeah.
Oh, the temptation to watch Directing
Top Gun
Part
was
1.
so good. Top Gun in 4DX was unbelievable.
It makes you wonder if when Henry Cavill gets sprayed in the face with the hot oil, do they spray you in the face with hot oil and 4DX to really make it immersive for you? Maybe not hot oil, but at least
the
like
cool
water.
Breeze of the mountains coming past.
Yeah, just so you really get the feeling that Henry Cavill's getting in that moment. But no, for me,
popcorn butter.
Yeah,
it's got to be popcorn butter, right?
Hot popcorn butter.
Yeah.
At least it would taste good as your skin's melting off.
Well, that's part of it. You can just like wipe it off and eat it while you're finishing the movie.
Mixed with your tears. Yeah, that's
exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
Tears of joy.
Of course, you're seeing a mission film. But yeah, that's the sequence for me that like is the crown jewel of this whole film.
Excellent. And kind of last thing I'll say, I'll just talk about helicopter chase for me. So I watched this on 4K. So last year I upgraded to Dolby Atmos for at home, which is magnificent when the right films are being used for it. And this is a big thing. That helicopter sequence at home sounded unbelievable. And I know I've got to, I've put a lot of money into the setup I have. That is one of the best sounding Blu-rays I've bought in a very long time. And actually the helicopters, if anyone knows what Dolby Atmos is, it's basically 3D sound. And it was one of the first times I could genuinely, without a sound like a gimmick, it was going around. Cammy mentioned immersive, and that's exactly how it is. They do the IMAX ratio for the home media release as well. And as Tom Cruise runs and jumps on the rope, it does expand outwards. And I just like it when films even take that approach for people that are going to watch at home eventually. I'd obviously go see it at the cinema. We're going to see the new one at the cinema, but again, it's Tom Cruise, right? He wants the audience to experience things. He's not just saying it for the sake of saying it. He's making these films, so is McQuarrie, so that people can be invested. It's why we talk about them these days, why they have legacies, is because people are not just entertained by what they watch. It has a long-fitting memory with them, and they are special in their own right. Scott, you called it crown jewels. It absolutely is that. And this film, I think, is the crown jewel of the series. And kind of segueing off some of the big stunt stuff, because the only reason I put London was to bring up the ankle break, which we've finally done, and Elliot's tweet. I want to ask everyone what their favourite scene in the film is. Scott, I know we've basically just nabbed yours with helicopter chase. But for me, it's hard to pick a singular. I can pick a singular moment of so many different things, but I am going to go with the exchange. I know that's the name of the soundtrack. The moment they do the Dark Knight ripoff, and it sounds terrible, and I said the helicopter chase probably is by default the best thing in this film. The ending, the tension, it's all built up to that moment. But I just love on the rewatch the concept that they have to break out the villain to aid them to get this thing going. And I think that's when, to me, the film twisted from we're just here for the big action set pieces to also there's a really inviting story at the same time, and they're delivering this with these set pieces. So it's hard to pick a singular favorite scene, but I'm trying to hope that makes sense, because I'll be honest, I can't fault anything about this film. I don't care that if they do have faults, great, all credits to them. But for me, this is even my final thought as well. This is a perfect film, a perfect action film that doesn't happen often these days.
I mean, best scene is clearly Henry Cavill, reloading his fists. But, if I had to pick something else apart from that,
even laptop, even clonking him with the laptop in that is great.
Yeah.
I would actually pick kind of the reveal of, Walker being the villain to the rest of the team, or at least they figured it out and they double cross him at that stage. So with kind of Benji in the mask, but not knowing it's Benji in the mask, and the whole plan being revealed and then kind of showing up, and I really like that. It's a twist. It's a kind of harken back to that's how the IMF does it, and then they lose. And I really like the kind of sense of winning before them losing in that scene, because you're like, well, looking at the runtime, we've got a lot left to go. We got like an hour left to go, and it seems like at this point they've kind of cleaned everything up. What have they got to do next, kind of thing? And then it just kind of flips itself on its head again.
Yeah, for me, like, favorite scene, it's always going to be the helicopter sequence in the movie. It's hard to divorce myself from that sequence when I'm thinking about this movie. So I think I will just use this time just to say that in terms of like notable moments, I think Alec Baldwin is so good in this movie. And I am going to miss him so much in the sequels, because, they kill his character here. But like, he had the amazing Ethan Hunt monologue in the previous film. Every moment here he's taking what could easily be kind of generic boss character dialogue and bringing so much personality to it. He's also the perfect type of actor to put opposite Tom Cruise. They're both kind of intense. They're both pretty wacky, and they play off each other in such an energetic way. And I think, they've always kind of like switched out the MI or Mission Impossible Force, or IMF team, I should say, leader movie to movie. And I think they've often struggled to find someone who actually has chemistry with Tom Cruise. Like, I don't know that John Voight or Anthony Hopkins had real chemistry with him.
Is this where Nick Offerman comes in? That's my question.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe. But to me, like, Alec Baldwin had the chemistry you want for that, leader of the unit. And so I mourn his passing in this movie.
If we're like throwing in a secondary, because Cam had two, so I get a second one.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
I'm just going to throw a little bit of love for the actual bit of spy work that happens in this film, because me and Cam love spy movies, and that is when they actually get to the big sort of disco. I call it a disco. I'm clearly an old man in Paris. I don't know, rave. I guess that's the word. Piss up, whatever you want to call it.
There's an EDM festival, maybe?
Sure. But then you find out there's like a speakeasy inside the rave, and you get to meet the White Widow and all that sort of stuff there, where he's pretending to be John Lark, and he's like quietly like taking the guys down. Kind of reminds me of I think it's Thunderball, where Bond takes out forgetting the henchwoman's name, Fiona Volpe, and sits her down. She's just dead, trying to play it off cool, that sort of thing. Like, I just love all that. It's a little bit of spy work, which I like to see, and it's a nice quiet moment as well.
Absolutely, it's great. And final thoughts to you guys. I kind of said mine. I'm going to stick with it. It's the perfect action film, and I think it is. I don't want to call it the peak of the franchise because we've still got 2 more at least, maybe, coming our way. But it is. I think this is the film that's put Mission Impossible from good franchise to great franchise. I think this is the one that's done the most, and to be doing this 6 films in. To be the best, how many franchises have their best film, arguably best film, six films in? It doesn't happen.
Well,
often.
I mean,
Police Academy.
Police Academy is the obvious
Revenge of
choice,
the
but
Sith.
I mean, Revenge of the Sith. I think you can. It's not the 6th, but I think you could point to the Fast and Furious franchises, something with a bit of a comparison point. Having 5 and 6 were very strong.
So 6 is just a good number in the franchise, usually. Just in general.
Halloween 6, home run. Yeah. Actually, I'll say this. Actually,
Friday
the
the 13th. Okay.
MCU film.
Yeah, Friday the 13th, Part 6 is actually one of the best ones.
On Her Majesty's Secret Service.
And the eternal question to the Star Trek fans below: what's the 6th Star Trek film? Isn't the whole even odd number thing?
It's The Undiscovered Country, and it's probably the 3rd best of all the films, I'd say. Maybe 2nd.
Second or 3rd.
Yeah, depends who you are.
So you can't go wrong with a 6. If you get through to the 6th film of a franchise,
that's
really
the
can't
magic
go wrong.
number to make it to. Is get to 6.
Although Jurassic
Prince.
Park 6 or Jurassic World 3, Dominion.
Well, at least it's all over now. Until they reboot it again, and there was another island all along. Oh, that was the 2nd film.
Life finds a way.
If I'm going into my final thoughts, it's my 2nd favorite of the franchise. It's not quite topping Mission Impossible 3 for me. I really do enjoy that film. But this is the film that got me interested in the franchise. This is the film that really clued me into it, because I'd seen all the films, but I wasn't a fan of the films. Now I can say that I'm not only a fan of the films, but I'm incredibly excited for the next film coming out. And all that hype is based down to this film. So it's done a good enough job of not only making me rewatch back through the franchise and kind of, fall in love with the films in their own rights, but also looking forward to the future, be excited about what's coming up next and how they can push the boat out further and how they can change the landscape of cinema. Because we've already talked about kind of the possible influence over Bond films, action films in general and stuff like that. Will there be more films with crazier stunts coming around? Is Tom Cruise going to push that boat even further? I know that the featurette for the next film coming out is all to do with the stunts. So, this is a groundbreaking film that's just kind of laying the way for the next groundbreaking film that's going to be coming out very soon. And it's set such a good bedrock that it's so promising, looking forward to the future with the next film.
Yeah, well said.
I mean, for me, it's okay. This film doesn't feature any doves or slow motion bike foo.
Does he wear sunglasses?
Yeah,
he does do rock climbing though.
He hasn't got the hair. He hasn't got the hair, and that
Mm.
was my hair for a long time until I lost the ability to have hair. I jest. People talk about law of diminishing returns when it comes to franchises, and we named some spaces where it wasn't necessarily that, and it got better as it went on. But I think if you listed a bunch of franchises, a lot of the time it would be this is where it's starting to get a bit of Rocky, and Rocky is probably a good example. I think would that be Rocky Balboa?
Balboa,
Yeah.
good film.
Good film.
Yeah.
Probably a wrong analogy. But if there was ever a franchise to buck the concept of the law of diminishing returns, it's the Mission Impossible films. They seem to get better with age. They are like a fine wine. So for me, I'm not going to say which is my favorite as of yet. I don't know if I have that opinion, but it's certainly one of my favorites of the franchise.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as you, where it's I'm not quite ready to say it's my favorite, but in terms of a beginning to end action film, it is the best. It's the most confidently assembled and incredibly well pulled off when you look at just the scale of it. But it just depends what you're looking for in a Mission Impossible movie, because I can look at the Brian De Palma original, which is delivering a lot of things that this movie is just not even trying to do. It's trying different things. So to me, this one is the pinnacle in terms of when we look at action filmmaking of this era, this movie is near the top.
Yeah.
And so I almost feel like it's unfair to expect more from Dead Reckoning Part 1. And if it doesn't live up to it, that's okay. Like, Sean Connery never topped Goldfinger. You have a height, and if this is the height, Fallout, that is an incredible height. And hopefully what's to come is just as impressive, but maybe not to the same level. We'll find out.
No, it's a great analogy, and kind of in like, I know it's not Mission Impossible, but to do Top Gun Maverick straight after this is quite a remarkable feat. I think back to back for Tom Cruise, and that's what's going to be exciting heading into the Reckoning, and it's going to round out stage review. Listen, I know we've been longer than normal. I know we've almost gone the length of the film, but we want to hear from everybody at home. So please do comment below your thoughts on Mission Impossible Fallouts. Again, with your thoughts on the film, how it compares to the others, how you thought this conversation's gone. If you like this video, do consider hitting that like button and subscribe. We do have some more Mission Impossible stuff coming. Now, we're pre-recording this. It's not even July yet. I know this video is coming out on July the 4th. If we are lucky, there will be a Dead Reckoning spoiler-free review on Wednesday the 5th of July at 5 p.m. British Standard Time. That is all I can say about that. Nothing is confirmed, but that is the review embargo time. So if you're watching it on the day, that's your 24-hour notice. If you're watching it in the day after, it might be up already. If you're watching in the future, it doesn't matter. Reviews are out. Obviously, as we do with a lot of these big releases, we'll have a spoiler-free one. I'm going to have a big spoiler discussion once it's been out. It's had a bit of time. You might have seen it multiple times. You know, there's fluctuating dates. So there is going to be some more Dead Reckoning stuff. We just a TBC on both of the dates for what those videos will be as and when we do announce them. We'll put them on social media, which is Twitter, Instagram, @Cinema_Savvy, Facebook and letterboxd.com/CinemaSavvy with a link to Redbubble in that description below. But one of the reasons this video has been so good today is because we have had SpyHards on once more, Scott and Cam. Love getting you on this series. And I will say this, you know, I've said this in a couple of videos from this series. When this show was announced, there were two sort of things. A lot of people were asking for Mission Impossible 3. It was the most popular requested one. And I was dreading it, thinking, everyone's going to ask for Fallout, aren't they? But at the same time, Scott had already messaged like, please come on, Fallout. So I'm glad we got you both on for this one, the last one, the one before Dead Reckoning. But what are you guys up to at the moment?
Well,
just plug everything. Go for everything.
You've got your
socials. You've got a YouTube channel now. You've got video interviews, which have been amazing as well. We've seen them come up. But just plug. You've got the space. Whatever you need to plug.
Sure, I'll plug away. I mean, in terms of the YouTube channel that you kindly mentioned there, we've got a few of our interviews. We have a Spy Master interview series, over 50 interviews now with filmmakers, actors, all sorts, basically. And on the YouTube channel, we've got the full video versions of our chats with Colin Salmon, Denise Richards, and quite a few more on the way as well. But on the actual main channel, SpyHards podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, literally the week that the day this episode comes out, George is actually appearing on our show as we talk about perhaps a slightly less remembered film with 2011's The Mechanic, the remake of the classic film starring Jason Statham. So, there's a lot of George Aldridge going around this week, as it seems. And the week after, the week that Fallout comes out, we have... the week that Dead Reckoning Part 1 comes out, we have our final Daniel Craig review of No Time to Die coming out on that Tuesday. And then later on in the week, we will have a sort of spoiler-free review ourselves of Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 coming as well. So an exciting sort of 2 weeks of SpyHards there. First of all, get your George Phil, and then come back for Bond and Ethan Hunt the following week. You know, who could ask for more?
Yeah, and I'm not going to spoil anything, but we have already recorded a couple interviews for Mission Impossible films. And those will be coming out in the, sprinkled around in the near future. And there are some pretty cool ones.
Absolutely. And listen, The Mechanic, I won't plug what's discussed in that film, in that episode. But if you like Jason Statham, we get to sort of rank some Jason Statham films as well, which is a lot of fun. So thank you both for having me on that. That was a lot of fun recording that. And aside from that, Tayte, is there anything else to plug? I'm so behind on dates and whatnot.
So many films. I've got to, because the tickets are now available, I've got to start booking in for Oppenheimer.
I have booked it. I have a double bill.
You?
I am going to the BFI IMAX at 8 a.m. on Friday the 21st of
to watch Barbie.
July. To watch Oppenheimer. Now listen, to get to Waterloo for 8 a.m. from where I live, the day after train strikes, I can't get there by train. And my journey begins at approximately 5:20 a.m. that morning. I'll then be driving home. I'll be napping. I'm going to have a change of outfit because I'm going to go from a black suit to pink clothes. Well, not pink clothes as a plural. I'm going to go watch Barbie in the evening. I have the tickets booked. I'm going with someone from work. It's going to be a very different vibe. I will not be bleaching my hair blonde, though. I cannot commit to something that extreme. I'm not Ryan Gosling, and I never will be. As much as I would love to be able to wear that jacket from Drive.
I will wear my pink polo shirt to that film, and that is probably as far as I can commit myself to it. But I'm going to be inside all weekend. I'm not going to be able to possibly go to the cinema, so I got to pick and plan my timings. But what I'm basically saying is, for the channel, we have a lot of reviews coming out, a lot of films coming up over the next 2 weeks. We are proper into blockbuster season. If you want a full rundown of the things, go follow us on our social medias. So Facebook, Instagram, Letterboxd, Twitter, all just type in Cinema Savvy. You'll be able to find us, or at cinema_savvy for those with the hashtags and stuff like that. Yeah, there is so much coming out. Go watch our previous video on our summer blockbuster rundown, where we go through every single thing that we're going to be looking at. And also at some point, probably already filmed, but we will be doing our Untitled Monthly Movie Show, where we'll talk about the previous films of the month. So if you want to know what we watched the previous month, that should already be out at this point, I believe. So go and watch that.
Definitely. Please do. And like I said, thank you both for taking time out to join us tonight for this review. Thank you everyone at home for watching. That's been watching not just today's episode, but every other Mission Impossible video. It's nice to get a short series. It's nice to be revisiting franchises. And this one's been an absolute blast. So I said, do join us for Dead Reckoning. Get us on social media. Follow the SpyHards. Enjoy yourself. Enjoy the big screen experience. Go and watch the new one at IMAX. You know it's the right thing to do. And we shall see you there. Take care.